Chapter 203. After Dr. Strange left, Chun-Ong sat in front of the experiment bench and fell into contemplation. Placing his consciousness in the body of an ordinary human made Chun-Ong feel sluggish for a long time. Even the breadth and speed of his thinking were limited. It was as if he had a bad cold and a high fever, causing him to lose consciousness and become delirious. His body felt like it was wearing a thick cover, and he could only vaguely observe the outside world. His usually agile thinking was now as slow as an idiot. Chun-Ong moved his limbs and walked out of the laboratory. In the eyes of others, he still walked with agility, but only Chun-Ong knew that he was changeable. He can't see the electromagnetic radiation in the air, can't hear the background gravitational waves of the universe, can't control the molecules, atoms, nuclei, hadrons, bosons, fermions, and the complex knowledge in his memory can only be slowly recalled with the human brain. The environment that can be observed is only a small area of light radiation and mass action. He can't see infrared, ultraviolet, infrasound, and ultrasound. Chun-Ong felt like he was confined to an isolated island in the vast dark matter environment of the universe, and the narrow space made him particularly uncomfortable. Because the research task is extremely confidential, Chun-Ang's laboratory is in the Avengers building. The interior of this building, donated by Stark Industries, has been transformed beyond recognition. The defensive structure takes up a lot of space, and the activity area where the Avengers are located is always the most convenient location in the entire building. Dr. Chun. Just as Chun-Ong passed by the activity area, someone stopped him. "Peter, what's the matter?" The person who came was Little Spider. He rubbed his hands a little uneasily and said, "Can I take a picture of you? My work needs some photos of celebrities." "Doctor, you are a hot favorite for the next Nobel Prize. Then you're really busy." "2 jobs, hero vigilante and newspaper reporter." Chun-Ong made a pose and asked Peter to take a picture. He smiled and asked him, "Then why don't you accept Nick's invitation? Becoming an Avenger has a generous allowance and a more decent job. Even if you don't want your family to know what you do, Nick will help you cover it up." Hearing this, Peter was a little hesitant. "I don't know what he's thinking, Doctor. Maybe he doesn't want to be separated from society. My family, friends, they are all ordinary people. Superhero identity makes me more and more distant from them. That's why I need an identity as a normal person to balance my responsibilities and life." Chun-Ong nodded to indicate that he understood. He brought the little spider into the activity room and said to him, "Then you will feel very tired. I will make you wish you were dead." "Yes, Doctor, I can feel it." Peter covered his face tiredly. The activity room was a place where heroes usually rested and entertained, so there was everything here. Chun-Ong sat on the piano stool next to him and said to Peter seriously, "Peter, we are different from ordinary people." He tried a few notes under the piano and said, "For ordinary people, they work hard all their lives to pursue something. But we can get it easily. For example, the piano. Millions of people in the world learn the piano, and tens of thousands of people love it with their souls. It is a dream for them, a goal to pursue." Hearing this, the little spider nodded again and again. His girlfriend, Gwen, was a young artist. When they were dating, she listened to the concerts and records of those performers. The best performers had all the careers and wealth that ordinary people could only dream of. High prestige and status. The piano was considered one of the most elegant music and a stepping stone to the upper class. Many people spent their lives struggling in this field, giving everything they had. But in reality, what is it? It is just a kind of movement of hitting the keyboard. Chun-Ong smiled. Music is a kind of emotional way of saying it. To put it bluntly, it is sound waves. And playing the piano is nothing more than hitting the keyboard at the right time, causing the mechanical movement of the piano hammer and producing sound waves on the steel wire and steel plate. Music is the fluctuation of the air. To be able to make this kind of fluctuation of the air carry emotion, it is not a performance but a superpower. The so-called feeling of emotion in the music is nothing more than deceiving yourself. Is it like that? Hearing this for the first time, Peter was unable to react for a moment. A series of smooth notes flowed out from Chin Ang's hand. It was more beautiful than anyone Peter had ever heard. Chen Ong pulled out a hand and turned his body to look at Peter. He did not even look at the keyboard. The complex and standard notes flowed out from his right hand. The ability of ordinary people is too poor. They cannot grasp the timing of pressing the keyboard and cannot remember the sequence of pressing the keyboard. Thus, they dress this simple action in a beautiful dress, giving it all sorts of sacred meanings. They elevate it to the level of art. But to put it bluntly, playing the piano is just playing the keyboard in the sequence. It is neither art nor complicated. Peter could not help but be shocked by Chen Ang's arrogant words. He was even more shocked by Chen Ang's current actions. He stood up. With one hand, Chen Ong played Ghost Fire, known as the ghost hand of the piano. Spider-Man's senses are more sensitive than ordinary people, but in the sound of Chen Ang's piano, what he heard was obviously more pleasant, or Chen Ang's handling of details was more delicate. After all, not any pianist can go beyond the limits of human perception to appreciate the piano. Shocked? You can do it too. Look at my hand, Chen Ong said. In Peter's eyes, Chen Ang's speed was not considered fast. His every move was clear to him. His movements on the keys and his playing seemed to have been slowed down dozens of times. Chen Ang's strength, timing, and muscle movements were all imprinted in the depths of Peter's mind. He knew that if he wanted to, he could replicate them at any time. We are different. Chen Ang's calm voice came from the music. Human beings have to go through arduous efforts to form muscle memory. Among them, the talented ones have to work hard to remember knowledge and learn skills. But for us, it's a piece of cake. The skills they are proud of, the things they racked their brains to learn, sports, music, work skills, are just simple imitation for you. You can feel a world that is thousands of times more complex than theirs. Your vision can see the mites on your girlfriend's face. Your hearing can hear the sound of a mosquito flapping its wings thousands of meters around. Your sense of smell in the city is like falling into the source of stench. Your taste can taste the disgusting taste covered by seasoning in food. Chen Ong just restored the super five senses that Peter tried to forget from his memory, which made Peter nauseous. He pushed Chen Ong away and ran to the side to vomit. And Chen Ang's voice was still cold as he said these facts. Tell me, Peter, when you see your girlfriend's thick pores, smell her stinky body odor, feel the dirt and bacteria on her body, hear the sound of her fart, and taste the smell of her feces on the tip of your tongue, will you still love her? I can love her. The little spider struggled. It's different, Peter, it's different. Chen Ong sighed. From the moment you changed, everything was different. Do you think this is the trouble brought to you by superheroes? Yes, there are factors in this aspect. After an ordinary person's living environment changes, they will feel at a loss and will be changed. If they enter another social class, even their views will be changed. This is just a change in environment. Chen Ong spread his hands. The torture you are suffering now is just the impact of another way of life on you. If you are willing to accept your superhero identity, it is not much more difficult than graduating from college. Just like Stark, you can easily accept this change and even love it. But there is something different. Your essence has changed. You have a conflict with this world. Your way of thinking and actions are still human, but you are no longer the same. You can pretend to forget and pretend that you are no different from ordinary people except for your superpowers, but this will not change your transcendent nature. You are completely different from human beings in physiology. Believe me, time will make you change. This change will torture you until your personality, 3 views, character, and cognition change from ordinary human to abnormal to adapt to your uniqueness. There was also a ripple in the depths of Chen Ang's consciousness. Chapter 204. Extraordinary and ordinary may not be a problem for other heroes, because heroes themselves are extraordinary. Stark is an industrial tycoon, Pym and Bruce are excellent scientists, Hawkeye and Black Widow are agents. Their lives have nothing to do with ordinary, or they are born with extraordinary qualities. But Spider-Man is different. Before he got his powers, he was an ordinary high school student. 2 quite different identities separate his life. On the one hand, he is the vigilante Spider-Man in New York, and on the other hand, he is the clumsy and kind high school student Peter, Aunt May's nephew and Gwen's boyfriend. The contradiction that once appeared in Chen Ang is quite obvious in him. The conflict between the past and the reality, and even the future, the extraordinary and ordinary are an irreconcilable contradiction, and it is the inevitable price to pay for transcendence. The only difference is that Peter may still have a buffer, but the degenerated Chen Ang has no room to retreat. If life is compared to a play, then the pursuit of truth and deep loneliness will be the eternal theme of Chen Ang. Of course, not everyone has the courage to face all this. Peter felt very confused. At the reminder of Chen Ang, he subconsciously opened his spider instincts, but he was soon frightened by this feeling. Just touching some of the surface, he had a great fear of the completely unknown world. There were noises, tiny vibrations in the air, and microorganisms and bacteria that were everywhere. A world that was completely different from that of ordinary humans appeared in front of him. It was the world in the eyes of a spider, and everything in the world showed its different nature. But Peter's inner fear interrupted this feeling, and he screamed in fear. Unlike the Oriental people who are obsessed with eternity and transcendence, Westerners have a special fear of power. They regard longevity as a punishment and believe that power must carry a curse behind it. "What are you afraid of?" Chen Ang asked inexplicably. "It's a kind of torture." Peter shook his head and replied, "The meaning of power is to protect and save. I control my ability, not let it control me. When I have the power, it means that I need to take responsibility for it, and not use it to satisfy my own desires or to pursue greater power." He took a few steps back and said, "Thank you, Doctor. I found the direction I wanted to go." After that, he grabbed the camera next to him and rushed out of the Avengers building. Chen Ang let go of the restrictions on his ability, and his vision went infinitely deeper. His power was limitless, and for a moment, it made him feel omnipotent. Chen Ang paused for a moment to familiarize himself with this state, and only then did he dispel the illusion produced by the sudden increase in power. Peter was also an important experimental subject. His senses, abilities, and thinking speed were far superior to ordinary people, but the effect he showed was only that of a relatively powerful human. Compared to his potential, it was not worth mentioning at all. A man as distinguished as Peter, in life and conduct. He should have behaved differently from ordinary people, but when Peter hid his identity, he was completely like a high school student. It was like an elephant that was tied to a tree when it was young. When it grew up and was able to break free from the rope, it still didn't realize this and was obediently tied by the rope. Chen Ang believed that Peter was a typical example of such a phenomenon. His ability was bound by his subconscious as a human, and his human personality dominated his behavior patterns. Any information that tried to impact this personality was rejected. This situation of perception barrier was of great significance to Chen Ang's research on consciousness. Tawny had been staying in his dedicated laboratory in the Avengers building for a week. Little Pepper had looked for him several times, but he had refused. The Ultron project was close to stagnation. Although progress was smooth in materials, structure, and energy, there had been no major breakthrough in artificial intelligence, the core aspect of superhuman mutation. "Ms. Pepe has called you 3 times, sir." With all due respect, if you don't go to see her, I'm afraid Stark Industries will be finished. Jarvis reminded him. Little Pepper will understand me. Jarvis, why can't I get rid of your design ideas? If I can't make more breakthroughs, Ultron is just another Jarvis. It may be a good artificial intelligence, but it is far from enough to fight against Skynet. Tawny felt frustrated. Sir, Ms. Pepe, what do you think if I borrow the source code of Skynet? No, most of the code is programmed in a completely different way from the existing system. With our strength, we can't crack it yet. Tawny was frustrated. He grabbed his hair and turned around. Sir, shut up. Tawny interrupted Jarvis impatiently. You're talking too much. Isn't it just Little Pepper? Don't interrupt my train of thought. Isn't it just Little Pepper? A familiar voice came from the door, making Tawny's hair stand on end. Little Chili Pepper was dressed in a tight-fitting business attire. Her pretty face was as cold as frost, and her long legs, clad in high heels, tapped on the marble floor with every step she took. She sneered at Tony. Is this how you talk about me behind my back? Tawny Stark. Jarvis. Tawny gritted his teeth. Sir, I'm afraid you're finished. Jarvis's electronic voice flickered a few times. I haven't seen you for a long time. I didn't expect that I would have to face the fact that I'm the third party in addition to competing with the Playboy, Tawny. If you fall in love with scientific research, can the stagnant projects of Stark Industries take away even a little bit of Mr. Stark's love? Little Pepper said sarcastically. Little Pepper. Tawny's thoughts turned quickly. He dug out a dozen classic cases in his mind. He was the Casanova Stark. Coaxing women was what he was best at. Oh! Tony's lower abdomen was hit by Little Chili Pepper's knee, causing him to bend over in pain like a shrimp. I was wrong. It was always women who coaxed me, Tawny thought as he rolled on the ground. Pep took out a short stick from the prototype of the Ultron. Tawny broke out in a cold sweat. That was a combat robot. Its strength was comparable to aerospace alloys. Even Stark had to rely on the robot to dismantle it. High-energy electromagnetic pulse, Pep said as she picked up the part in her hand. That's just an alloy stress bearing part. Before Tony could finish his sentence, he was sent flying more than 10 meters away by the electromagnetic waves Pep used on the alloy stress bearing parts. Tony could feel his entire body trembling from the electric current. He could even hear the small arc reactor burning in his chest. Chapter 205. If there was anyone Tony could trust after the betrayal of Obadiah, who had watched him grow up, it was undoubtedly Little Chili Pepper. In the relationship between the two of them, Little Chili Pepper was the more mature and reliable one. Just like what she was showing now, she was capable, cool, and trustworthy. This was Tawny's thought after he handed over Stark Industries to Pepper. What the hell happened? Tawny got up from the ground and clapped his hands. If something big happens, Jarvis will inform me. The devil is hiding in the details, Jarvis can't find it. Peppa shook her head. Forget it, I know you won't care about this, but I want to tell you, the Avengers will be doomed. This time the whole world will face a crisis. I don't think anyone but him will bring a crisis to the world. Tawny shrugged indifferently, and you should tell this to Nick Fury. You know I'm hiding something from you, right? Pepe raised her eyebrows and emphasized. Of course, who doesn't have a little secret? Tawny replied sarcastically, as if he felt his words were too sour. He added, I don't hide anything from you except me. You're the one who helps me date girls. Yes, I know your damn taste. Pepper pressed her eyebrows helplessly. When she was just Tawny's assistant, she helped him deal with a lot of trash on the bed. She knew very well what Tawny liked, hot, passionate, everyone was so similar except for her. Before coming to Stark Industries to apply for your assistant position, I still have a lot of work. Tawny picked up his coffee and interrupted her sharply. Of course, I'm not surprised if you say you're a stripper who's not popular with customers. It could be seen that Tawny really didn't care. And he didn't think that Pepper had any secrets that needed to be hidden from him. Pepper smiled. Her entire temperament suddenly changed. The capable and elite image of a professional woman on her body suddenly changed into a more oppressive feeling. If she was still a delicate vase female lead just a moment ago, at this moment she completely occupied the center of the camera. Her aura was awe-inspiring, powerful, and full of tension. This made Stark, who was used to standing in the center of the flashing lights, feel very unfamiliar. Little Chili Pepper had always been the bright color that adorned him, but now she had suddenly shown a sense of anxiety that was as strong as him, causing him to lose his grip on his cup. "I was once a superhero." Pooh! Tawny was so shocked that he even spat out the coffee. He awkwardly shook off the liquid on his hand and asked in disbelief, "What did you say?" He repeated at a speed several times faster than usual. "You said that you were once a superhero? That's not important. What's important is—" Pep maintained her cold expression and said impatiently, "That's not important?" Tawny interrupted her. He asked loudly, "You're telling me that my girlfriend hid a fact that is enough to subvert my impression of her. She might even lie to me about her identity and past. That's not important? Then what else is important?" Tawny babbled on about some illogical things. Pep could not bear it anymore. She pinned Stark, who could not react in time, to the wall and shouted into his ear, "I still have an old enemy, the Wellington family. I've also been affected by the genius gene. I've also saved the Earth before. I'm Kelly Johnson. Right now I've obtained some important information from the Wellington clan. You better listen to me obediently. The shield has been infiltrated. As far as I know, an organization called Hydra has taken refuge with a very dangerous person. His code name is Loki. He may have the power to affect the minds of humans. I don't know how many people have been controlled by him. No one can believe it, not even you." "You don't believe me?" Tawny heard this and began to struggle violently. He questioned in astonishment and anger. "I've said so much and you only care about this sentence?" Pep was almost going crazy. "Think about it. Where did your fear of Skynet come from? Why are you so crazy about fighting against it? Is this normal? Skynet will destroy the entire world." "But that's not what you think," Pep said seriously. "Think about it carefully. Who put this idea in your head?" Hearing this, Stark stopped struggling. He closed his eyes and began to recall. Skynet will destroy the entire world? The logical sequence of this idea is, no. My memory doesn't match my logic. It omitted too much and the derivation steps are problematic. The entire logic is full of contradictions and confusion. That's because your logic is different from a normal person's. Pep rolled her eyes. What made me ignore the incongruity in my memory? Of course, most human thoughts are hidden in the subconscious, but just like the wind blowing across the surface of the water, there will be traces left on the surface. However, this concept is very abrupt in my mind. It doesn't fit my thinking pattern, and it's impossible that I haven't thought through a decision thoroughly. He suppressed his anger and said, "I'm being controlled." Breaking free from Pep's loose control, Tawny came to Jarvis's screen and ordered, "Pull up my surveillance records." Jarvis had all of Tawny's surveillance records. Because he was a technology addict, he never left his technology for a moment. Tawny easily locked onto a time period based on his memory. My thinking started when Pym came to me with the Ultron plan, so it should have happened before that. It might not have happened at that moment because the person trying to control me might have given me a psychological suggestion before that, and then Pym triggered it. Pym should have been affected too. Damn it. He knows he can't completely control us. Soon, Tony locked on to a familiar stranger in the fast-forward video. He stared at the pale, skinny man who exuded an evil charm. In the video, Tawny acted as if he didn't see the man, passively accepting Loki's words in his ear. He should be Loki. Pep looked at the man with interest and added, Skynet and Tesseract. He seems very interested in both. If he controlled you to crack Skynet, then to get the Tesseract, he needs to control. I originally planned to conquer you with an army, the man said. I wanted you to submit to the great god, the king of Asgard, and the lord of the 9 realms, under the rule of Loki. But the earth is more fragile than I expected. Humans are really a lowly race. You are full of suspicion, and conspiracies. You are born to be conquered slaves. Even without Ziritha's army, you will destroy yourselves because of mutual suspicion. Your world is built on this fragile trust. Loki made a gesture of pulling a string. As long as I pull it lightly, you will explode into ashes with a bang sound. I also have to protect you, lest your madness destroy my future kingdom. Thor will be here soon, and then there will be a good show to watch. Loki smiled slightly and swaggered out of Tawny's office. Stark looked at his back, and his eyes seemed to be spewing fire. Loki's behavior obviously made him very unhappy. Pep, on the other hand, was thoughtful. Thor? Are there code names named after Norse mythology? In addition to Loki, there is another member of their group who will appear soon. Then he will have a good show, Tawny said with a sullen face. I want to have a good talk with him. He emphasized the word. Thousands of miles away, in a remote astronomy research institute, Jane Foster carefully checked the instrument and turned to Dr. Eric behind her. That phenomenon has appeared again. It is appearing more and more frequently in New Mexico. We need to figure out what it means. Chapter 206. After maintaining a certain tacit understanding with Skynet, SHIEL, DUS headquarters returned to New York. Plus, the captain of SHIEL, DS Rapid Response Force, Brock Rumlow, was standing behind another person. He looked so respectful that most people who did not know the inside story would be shocked. The power of SHIEL-DS Rapid Response Force was enough to know most of the top-secret information within SHIELD, and because of internal power checks and balances, he was not controlled by Director Nick. To be able to infiltrate SHIELD like a sieve, Hydra's strength deserves my attention. But can you tell me why you have so many doubts about Skynet's intelligence? Doubts? And doubts? Almost every line of intelligence about Dumb and Skynet has a red question mark on it. The evil man waved the top-secret information in his hand. As if remembering something, Brock Rumlow, who held a high position within SHIELD, whose real identity was Hydra's spy in SHIELD, showed a chilling fear on his face. Sir, there are many conflicts between the intelligence about Skynet and Dr. Annihilation and the actual situation that we have probed. We suspect that SHIELD has concealed the crucial part. Dr. Annihilation's true intelligence may be a higher-level secret in SHIELD. Only Nick should have access to it. We need time to obtain it. No need. The man turned his head in disdain. He doesn't affect the overall situation. You have prepared a lot of superheroes and collected a lot of intelligence, but what's the use of this? He shook his head and flipped through the information in his hand that recorded the complete situation of the Avengers. With a wave of his hand, the falling information burned in the air and turned into ashes. There is no way to grasp the key. This is the main reason for your failure. Crossbones' expression suddenly changed. A strange look appeared in his eyes as he said to himself, arrogant. The last person who looked down on Dr. Annihilation like this. His ashes have already melted in the volcano in Yellowstone Park. Trust is the key. The biggest weakness of humans is not emotion, but suspicion and suspicion. Most ordinary humans do not trust the vigilantes who protect them. The man said contemptuously, they are jealous of their protectors. The attacks you caused, panic and crime would only strengthen the trust between the two sides. I like your lurking attitude, but I have my doubts about your abilities. During the establishment of the so-called Avengers, there was internal strife, and the outside world did not trust them, but you did nothing? I let them stabilize. This subordinate knows his mistake. Crossbones lowered his head and carefully hid his thoughts. That's why you have to change your direction. Soon, superheroes will cause a terrifying disaster. Enough people will die. When the time comes, activate your powers. I want the Avengers to stink to the end. Do you know what to do? The man asked as he looked at the crossbones. We will influence the government and public opinion, legally control those superheroes, and cause them to split up internally. Stand with most of the untouchables and hide you among the ordinary people. They are stupid and impulsive. Most people don't think with their own brains. They'll believe whatever you say. Therefore, there was no need for combatants. Send those who are unarmed, stand in the shoes of ordinary people, and stir up their emotions. Insult them, attack them, use lies and public opinion to smear them, and find out their true identities. Attack their spirits from their reputation, beliefs, relatives, and lovers, and then destroy their lives. Let me think, what do humans call their actions? The man thought for a moment. Cold violence? Yes, that's the word. And the person inside that rock in the sky? The man used the scepter in his hand to point at the 5 Fingers Mountain in the sky. He pondered and said, Many people are afraid of it. Even its companions don't believe it, and it is also a threat to us. Just instigate the government to exile it. Load the engine onto an asteroid and exile it into the endless darkness of the universe. Crossbones felt a chill down his spine. Listening to these extremely vicious tricks made even a veteran criminal like him feel a subtle sense of discomfort. The Avengers have 2 core members, Iron Man and Captain America. The man tapped the scepter in his hand. Their relationship determines the unity of the Avengers. It may seem unbreakable, but there's a dead knot. The man smiled mysteriously and gently stroked his scepter. Send the Winter Soldiers to attack Captain America, and then tell Stark that his parents died in the hands of the Winter Soldiers. The eyes of the leaper behind Crossbones flickered, but Crossbones said in a trembling voice, Yes. As if unable to bear to see this vicious gloom, the sun shone through the clouds and shone on the man's face. It was the evil god Loki that Stark and Little Chili Pepper had seen in the video. Crossbones was about to turn and leave when Loki's voice suddenly came from behind. You must remember our agreement. Next time, bring me the Tesseract. Crossbones replied fearfully, I will, my lord. He quickened his pace and left the place. Loki stood silently in the same place, and his face was cloudy and uncertain. Will you blame me, mother? But I have no other choice. I can only become the supreme of the 9 realms if I give it the 6 gems and the earth. Then it will be the 8 realms. No one can stop me, not Odin, not Thor. The evil god Loki, the adopted son of Odin, the king of Asgard, a hybrid of the frost giants. Because of his ambition, he was involved in the war between 2 powerful beings in the universe, Thanos and the Apocalypse, which led to a war that stretched across the entire multiverse, involving the gods of the 5 universes, 4 Apocalypse Knights and the most mysterious Apocalypse, a multidimensional republic from another universe, a split star soul, a mysterious quantum creature, 2 American governments, countless powerful beings, and a time traveler. The 6 infinity gems and the destruction of the earth? Loki muttered to himself. His eyes shone with wild ambition, and a terrible thought quietly grew in his mind. Why did he have to beg others? If he could find the secret of the 6 gems, he would be as powerful as Thanos and rule the entire universe. If he could find the secret of the earth that even Thanos was afraid of, would he be able to replace it? He lowered his head slightly to hide the greed burning in his eyes. Loki's shadow became fainter and fainter under the sun. Finally, it turned into a wisp of green smoke and disappeared. He did not notice that some inconspicuous metal objects behind him, such as a fire hydrant, were also emitting a metallic gelatinous gas. Chen Ong sat on a silver chair and watched him disappear. Chapter 207. What do you think of this scene? Chen Ong played with the soul gem in his hand and said to the shadow blocked by the building behind him. A man slowly walked out of the shadow. He had a typical black appearance with a black eye patch on his left eye. It was Nick. What happened here today? Any leak would cause turmoil in the world's security situation. Who would have thought that the director of S.H.I.E.L.D. would walk with the biggest enemy at present? S.H.I.E.L.D. has a mole. I have a vague feeling about this, but the deterioration of the situation is far beyond my expectations. Hydra is really like a poisonous snake, crippled but not dead, dead but not stiff. If a head is lost, there will be another head to replace it. At this point, I can't hide it from you. The situation has gone beyond my control to a considerable extent. Chen Ong listened to Nick's words and didn't take a word to heart. It was not beyond his judgment that Nick would cooperate with him, but he also knew that there was no trust between S.H.I.E.L.D. and him. S.H.I.E.L.D. would seize every opportunity to try to kill him, and Chen Ong didn't think S.H.I.E.L.D. had the right to talk to him. Chen Ong could destroy S.H.I.E.L.D. at any time, even the United States and the Earth. This was the basis of their cooperation and the reason why there was no trust between them at all. All of this was based on Chen Ang's unilateral, overwhelming advantage. It could be said that Nick cooperated with him with a mentality of self-abandonment, probably because Skynet could destroy S.H.I.E.L.D. at any time anyway, so he might as well put down his hostility and look for other opportunities. Chen Ang's gaze peeled off the shell of the soul gem layer by layer. Under the blue shell, the mysterious gem exuded strands of energy, making people feel a cool feeling from the gem. While analyzing the energy sample, he asked Nick, "If you still want to control the situation, then the Avengers are probably your only hope. If they know that S.H.I.E.L.D. has turned to Skynet, in their eyes they would definitely not be controlled by you. When you came to find me, you didn't have the slightest bit of worry or hesitation. We are the decision-makers. As for the thoughts of the Avengers," Nick shrugged indifferently. "Who cares? S.H.I.E.L.D. is an organization born to protect human interests. We don't care about cooperating with demons, as long as there are benefits between the two sides. But with me, you won't get anything out of it. Maintaining peace with you is our greatest benefit," Nick said decisively. "Do you know anything about Asgard?" Chen Ong suddenly turned around and asked. "You're talking about people from the realm of the gods?" "Yes, we have information about them," Nick answered honestly, as if he had nothing to hide from Chen Ong. "They have disappeared for too long, but as long as they have appeared in human history, we can find their traces. Odin, Thor, Loki, and the twilight of the gods' prophecy. Norse mythology is widespread. It's impossible for us to be ignorant." Chen Ong smiled and gestured. "For example, the cosmic Rubik's Cube? The artifact left on Earth by the people of the realm of gods. In order to find it, the Nazis and Red Skull worked hard. It's impossible for S.H.I.E.L.D. to not know anything. We have been entangled with Hydra for so long, but their heads were cut off by you." Nick sighed. Red Skull was a troublesome person, but his death was like smoke. Insignificant. Gold isn't important, Red Skull. Zola, Baron, they are all big people who give us a headache. Nick shook his head and sighed. "I will help you deal with Hydra. I think Alexander Pierce will give me face. You can also borrow the power of Skynet. It will cooperate with you to the greatest extent within its authority. On the eve of this storm, I hope these can give you some sense of security." "Alexander Pierce? I didn't expect the former director to be from Hydra." Nick looked a little gloomy. "I still remember him. He's a very good person." Suddenly, Nick's cell phone rang. He apologized to Chen Ong and walked to the side to pick up the phone. Chen Ong, on the other hand, looked south in the direction of New Mexico. A soundless wave swept past. "Some radiation. There was an obvious change in the physical data. This not only made Dr. Jian and her research team, who were thousands of miles away, overjoyed, but it also made Chen-Ong feel the rainbow bridge that spanned from Asgard. Lightning, spatial fluctuations, and Thor falling from the sky. Chen-Ong looked there, and the star map of the realm of gods appeared beside him. Heimdall swept past Chen-Ong, but he didn't notice it. Even the mysterious eyes that could see the souls of the creatures of the 9 territories couldn't find Chen-Ang's shadow. He couldn't even see a mortal like Nick beside Chen-Ong's interesting eyes. Chen-Ang's eyes stayed on Heimdall's orange eyes for a moment, then he shifted his gaze from Asgard to the 9 territories, the solar system, all the way to the end of the Milky Way. Heimdall felt the tremor of the power in his eyes, and under the influence of the soul power, he was even blinded for a moment. The terrible power that was like an abyss made him give up resistance from the depths of his heart, and he stood there blankly until the feeling disappeared without warning as it appeared. The brief moment made him think it was an illusion. Chen-Ong retracted his gaze. Just for a short moment, his eyes had swept across the entire Milky Way, and he had a detailed impression of the current situation. Thor was not punished by Odin by sealing his divine power because of his arrogance. On the contrary, the ruler of the realm of gods had already felt the coming storm. He sent his son to the center of the storm to control the situation. So Thor didn't lose his divine power, and was still the irascible and conceited prince. And his younger brother, Loki, naturally couldn't just send a destroyer to get rid of this competitor for the throne. He turned to Thanos and came to Earth in person before this. He was ready to complete the task given to him by Thanos and kill Thor at the same time. Loki controls most of Hydra's power and now uses the power of the psychic scepter to infiltrate his will between S.H.I.E.L.D. and the U.S. government unscrupulously. With the help of Hydra, Loki controls other forces and develops his own power smoothly. The S.H.I.E.L.D. controlled by Hydra has arrived in New Mexico and can clash with Thor at any time, involving the entire S.H.I.E.L.D. in action against Thor, and Tony is extremely hostile to Thor because of his erroneous inference. If things develop as Loki wants, S.H.I.E.L.D. will have a fierce conflict with Asgard, and the internal contradictions of the Avengers will intensify to the point of no return. Under the control of Loki, the master of conspiracy, the two conflicts will, of course, alternate at the most appropriate pace. Thor will receive the most powerful blow from S.H.I.E.L.D., and the Avengers will definitely be weakened to the most dangerous state because of the civil war before Asgard's revenge arrives. Chapter 208. The changes on Earth are really great. Thor looked around with a strange look on his face. The 3 warriors of the divine realm were accompanying him. They took Jane's car and set off from the New Mexico desert to a nearby town. The last time Thor came to Earth, it had been a long time for him. Looking at the pedestrians on the streets around him, this alien visitor was a little curious and excited. Jane followed behind them with a confused look, not knowing what she had picked up. "You said your name is Thor?" "Thor?" Jane asked curiously. "What does it have to do with the mythical Thor?" "Ha!" Thor replied proudly. "That's me." He looked a bit like him. Jane looked at Thor next to her. At least his face matched. If she hadn't seen the 4 of them descending from the sky in a dazzling beam of light, Jane wouldn't have believed a word of what they said. There was no shortage of freaks in this world who liked to go out in armor. It was fashionable for teenagers to wear tight clothes and masks on the street. "Then, Mr. Thor, why did you come to Earth?" Jane followed his words and asked. She didn't know if she should believe them because it all sounded so unbelievable. Speaking of this topic, Thor's face became very serious, and he showed a serious look that made Jane suffocate. "Can you tell me how to find the ruler of your country? I have something to talk to him about." "Country?" Daisy stuck her head out from behind and said, "There are still people who use this word to describe the United States? If you want to find our commander, you need to go to a white palace." "White? He has good taste." Thor nodded with a sincere expression. Daisy put her face close to him and observed carefully. Seriously, I don't see anything wrong with his expression. She turned to Jane and said, as a psychopath, he's the most handsome I've ever seen. Look at his abs. I can lick. Daisy. Jane screamed and pressed her back to her seat. Can you take me to him? Thor gestured at Jane. It seems that you are one of the smarter people in your country. The world is facing the invasion of darkness. You are in danger. If I don't see him, many people will die. Yeah, but we're used to it, Daisy rushed to say, 3 times a year and each time is different. Our country faces countless crises every year, including alien invasions. As small as a certain doctor inventing something that could endanger the survival of the race, there was also a nuclear crisis. It was a natural disaster. A certain artificial intelligence life was rebelling. She counted with her fingers and said, someone blew up the volcano in Yellowstone Park. Somebody has taken over New York. Someone is smashing the Earth with an asteroid from outer space. If it's just a small matter like this, there's no need to bother the great commander. Thor apparently believed Daisy's words. He asked incredulously, Midgard is so dangerous? Then why are you still living so freely? It looks like there are no warriors in this country. Jane rushed forward and covered Daisy's mouth. Don't believe what she said. Jane suppressed Daisy's resistance in a flustered manner, preventing Daisy from screaming, I'm telling him the truth. But I know she didn't lie to me. Thor looked into Jane's eyes seriously. She's habitually exaggerating. Jane wanted to deny it. But thinking about it carefully, what Daisy said turned out to be true, so she could only reluctantly respond. But she's not lying. Someone is indeed threatening the security of your world. Thor interrupted. Jane didn't expect the man in front of her to act more and more real. He looked more involved than a drama actor. Father Odin, Asgard, Loki, these words made her feel out of character and ashamed. One by one, the man's words popped out of his mouth. You mean, there's a dark force in the universe called the 4 Horsemen of the Apocalypse or something, and they're eyeing the 9 planets of the solar system? They've fought with you Martians many times, and you've resisted them outside the solar system. Now, 3,000 years later, they're back. Your father, Odin, sent you to unite Earth and fight them together? Daisy was fascinated. She accurately summarized Thor's words. She commented precisely, it sounds like a space opera. Then the two of them had an in-depth conversation about the history of Earth recorded in the Old Testament, the history of Asgard and Midgard fighting against the 4 Horsemen, and the history of Earth being covered up recorded in the Book of Prophecy. Wait, it's not the 4 Horsemen who are threatening us. That's after Armageddon. Jane had to interrupt their conversation. There's no dark force in the universe, no 4 Horsemen, no Archangel, no Jesus. It's just a mad scientist who created a robot that betrayed humanity. It's all really subversive, and I think it's like science fiction. But that's the case, okay? Dr. Doom created Skynet, and then he attacked New York in a frenzy, creating this series of disasters. Jane was a little excited. It's all a tragedy. It's not material for our entertainment and fantasy. Jane's mood was very low. She was almost begging Daisy to say this, but Daisy didn't seem to hear it. She was lost in her memories, and her face was dull. Wait. Daisy suddenly interrupted Jane's mood. What's the full name of Skynet? Daisy hurriedly took out her cell phone and said to Jane, hurry up, help me find out what the full name of Skynet is. I remember hearing it somewhere. It seems to be the first news. Heavily armed robots appeared on the streets of New York and exchanged fire with the army. These robots are very powerful, and the army suffered heavy losses. A military spokesman said these robots were controlled by an artificial intelligence called War Skynet. War Skynet. Thor repeated the name Daisy had read out. He turned his hand and held Mjolnir's hammer. Electromagnetic force spread out from the special hammer head and formed a wonderful connection with the Earth's magnetic field. The electromagnetic force between the two allowed Thor to freely control Mjolnir's hammer and the Earth's gravity. "Can you tell me which direction New York is?" Thor held the rope of Mjolnir's hammer and asked Jane to stop the car on the side of the road. Chapter 209. When Ch'en-Ang's gaze swept across the Milky Way from Earth, Swallow Star, who was far away in the Milky Way's first spiral arm, raised his head, and their eyes met in the endless void. This spiritual connection that transcended time and space, spanning billions of galaxies, allowed the two to complete the necessary communication in an instant. "Outsider." Swallow Star's voice was long and slow, but his fear of Ch'en-Ong could be heard. "I remember this feeling. What's your relationship with the apocalypse?" "The feeling you give me is exactly the same as him." "That's a memory from a long time ago." Ch'en-Ang's emotions were strangely calm. "I really want to play with you." Swallow Star's body moved a little, but it caused a universal disaster around him. The huge gravitational tide tore apart the planet next to him. "But you're too far away from me. I need a lot of energy to go to you. There are fewer and fewer planets in this universe that can provide me with energy. My emissaries will find you, and they will bring my will." Ch'en-Ong sighed. "Then you have to hurry. There are more and more people who want to trouble me. If I wait any longer, I may not have the time." Outside New York City, the once bustling New York harbor was now like a deserted beach. Because it was too close to the Skynet base, most New Yorkers chose to leave, preferring to take a detour. Ch'en-Ong stood on the remnants of the Statue of Liberty. This representative building of the old era of the United States had now become the evil symbol of Skynet. The declaration that was originally held in his left hand was now only half a broken arm, and on his right hand that was holding the torch, the symbol of Skynet was impressively eye-catching. This was the symbol of the new New York, the broken arm of the Statue of Liberty. Nick called on the Skynet system and locked onto a figure quickly approaching in the atmosphere. His body was violently rubbing against the air, and his whole body was burning like a torch. "Is he flying by throwing his hammer?" Nick clicked his tongue in wonder. "What's the difference between this and lifting yourself up by your hair? It's unbelievable. Don't use Earth's common sense to speculate about the universe." Ch'en-Ong didn't finish his sentence, because while he was speaking, Thor had already crossed dozens of kilometers, more than half of North America, and arrived in front of him. Mjolnir fell from the sky like a meteor, bringing with it a gravitational potential energy of hundreds of thousands of tons. The Statue of Liberty and the surrounding several kilometers of land were smashed into pieces. It was as if someone had slammed the surface of the water. The rock layer of the Earth's crust rose high like a wave and shattered into countless fragments in midair. Then it will fall to the ground. Just a small portion of the Mjolnir's power, which had the mass of a star, was enough to destroy New York City. Fortunately, when Ch'en-Ong disappeared from space, he smoothed out the fluctuating Higgs boson field in the void, so that the mass fluctuations were limited to the narrow range of the Skynet base. Thor stood in the middle of a large, glass-like pit. The disaster-ridden Statue of Liberty finally evaporated into particles this time, and Ch'en-Ong, who was originally standing on it, emerged from space with Nick and stood in front of him again. Nick smiled bitterly and patted the dust off his body, quite dissatisfied with this emissary of alien friendship. "Asgardian." Ch'en-Ong was the first to speak. "Did Odin send you here to provoke me? Is Asgard impatient with peace and wants to experience the hot-blooded battle on the edge of life and death? Or do you think you have the strength to challenge me?" Along with this sentence, only Thor's arrogant eyes could be seen. "Mortal!" Thor roared. "Who gave you the courage to provoke Asgard? I don't know where you dug up, war, and tried to control something you can't control, but you have provoked the taboo of the 9 realms, and your actions will get you killed." Nick heard Thor's impulsive words. He swallowed what he wanted to say and silently walked to the side, watching the conflict that was bound to intensify. First, Chun-Ong stretched out a finger. Asgardian monkey, you don't know what a mortal is. Second, Chun-Ong continued to stretch out a finger. Your understanding of me is also quite wrong. Your pride means nothing to me, and your beliefs are so ridiculous to me. Monkey, do you know your origins? Before you call yourselves gods, you'd better take off the collar I've hung around your neck. I'm not in the mood to give you a history lesson on Asgard, because that would waste too much of my time. So, just as Chun-Ong finished his sentence, a voice suddenly rang out. Thor felt a sharp pain on his neck, and the feeling of suffocation continued to come. He could only struggle in Chun-Ang's hands. He watched as Chun-Ong lifted him up with one hand. Mjolnir was at Chun-Ang's feet, and Thor tried to control it to fly over, but Chun-Ong stepped on it. Mjolnir was forged from the nucleus of a dying star, and it was conservatively estimated to weigh 3,000 Earths. The existence of this material alone was enough to tear the Earth apart. Usually, it was controlled by Thor, and he could freely control its mass. But now, this hammer, which was several times denser than neutron star matter, was firmly rooted in the ground, and it couldn't even get rid of one of Chun-Ang's feet. Thor had let go of the power that bound Mjolnir. He tried his best to summon his artifact and release its unparalleled power. But the hammer remained motionless, not even the concrete below it was crushed. Why? Thor's face was already red, and his eyes were bloodshot. He barely spat out a breath from his lungs and asked unwillingly, "Are you asking why you can't fight back against me, or why Mjolnir doesn't respond to your call?" Chun-Ong said lightly. Thor's face was ashen. As an Asgardian, he shouldn't have suffocated, but Thor felt that his life was slipping away from him bit by bit. He looked at Chun-Ong with eyes full of unwillingness and doubt. "Why?" he asked silently. "Because I am your creator. Asgardians, trying to use the power I gave you to fight against me, you are stupid. What if you are gods? What about me, who gave you power? If your nobility comes from your natural bloodline, then what about me, who created you?" Chun-Ong looked calmly at the gradually despairing Thor. "It seems that Odin didn't tell you. I gave you wisdom, I rewrote your genes, I wrote your destiny, I recreated your race. I am your beginning and end, your master and nightmare. What do you have to fight against me, stupid Asgardian monkey?" Nick's hands trembled slightly. Not only did Thor struggle with the last of his strength, but Nick also recalled the line of extremely insulting words he saw on the jeans. "Skynet property, abduction must be investigated. It seems that it's not just Earth, but even aliens have these things." Nick once again confirmed the results of the last autopsy analysis and recalled the legends of the mutant. What do we have to fight against him? Such thoughts kept flashing in Nick's mind, and a huge despair enveloped him, even more than Thor, who was struggling in Chun-Ang's hands. Soon, this question was answered by Chun-Ong himself. "The so-called innate nobility is all given to you by me. The sense of superiority you are proud of is just a control group in an experiment. The things that give you divinity are my collars to enslave you. 5,000 years of life, superhuman wisdom, natural divine power, strong physique. Ha ha." Chun-Ong smiled and said, "This is precisely the most despicable proof. Only wisdom. This is the supreme wealth that I have given you. And only wisdom. You are equal in front of me. Everything that comes from the power of wisdom is real, and everything that comes from the status and honor of wisdom is meaningful. The sense of superiority that your bloodline gives you is only a shame in front of me. Asgardians, prove it to me with your wisdom." Chun-Ong threw Thor on the ground. "Mjolnir is a very good creation. I can see that it was born in a very ancient era. The wisdom of your ancestors is amazing to cast a star into such a suitable substance. But the mass of all matter comes from the self-interaction of the Higgs field, which is commonly known as the God particle. Once I isolate the interaction between Mjolnir and the God particle, it will be a piece of dark matter to the mass field, unable to be affected by the mass of other matter, and unable to show mass. Even though it weighs as much as 3,000 Earths, it is just a decoration. Chapter 210. With a gentle lift, Chun-Ong had already picked up the Mjolnir, which was said to be only recognized in his hand. Mjolnir was forged from the center of a planet that was about to decline, and the material density had reached the extreme. Even the Asgardians themselves had to limit the power of this artifact. Otherwise, this hammer would have collapsed and distorted into a point, and then within 20 nanoseconds, it would form a small black hole 3 times the size of the solar system. Therefore, most of the power of this weapon was used to maintain its own existence. Its gravity must be balanced with the internal force that supports the atomic structure, otherwise it would cause catastrophic consequences. In the hands of Mjolnir, this hammer was only a weapon that could change its weight, but in the hands of Chun-Ong, it was a half-formed black hole. Thor struggled to get up from the ground, and when he saw Chun-Ong carrying his hammer, he roared and was about to pounce on him. But the fluctuations of the Bifrost in mid-air stopped him. In the white pillar of light, Odin's figure loomed, and the violent spatial fluctuations isolated Thor from rushing towards Chun-Ong enough. "Thor, don't let me down again." Odin walked out of the pillar of light with an angry look on his face. Holding the golden scepter in his hand, he stopped Thor and turned to Chun-Ong and said, "Dear Creator, the Asgardians pray for peace." This matter was a misunderstanding caused by Thor's impulsiveness. "We are not hostile to you. I don't care if you are malicious or not." Chun-Ong said to Odin with the hammer in his hand, "You should know the rules I set. If Asgard is eliminated in this competition, I will not show any mercy. Among the many civilizations I have created, you are not the best, and you have not shown any special advantages. The civilizations that have left the 9 realms will eventually return, and you will have an endless battle with them. The competition between civilizations is always the fiercest, and the loser will not have a second chance. The Asgardians are never afraid to fight." Odin answered Chun-Ang's words with a proverb circulating in the divine realm. "And aren't you the most hostile to them? It was you who made them flee their homeland, and it was also you, so that their souls had nowhere to rest. They hate you to the core and think about revenge day and night." Odin raised his head and said in a rather imposing manner, "Now that they have returned, they are preparing to take advantage of the fact that the 4 horsemen have yet to awaken. I will send you to hell." Of course, it was impossible for Chun-Ong to be unprepared, but he believed that there was no need to prepare. Even though this was only a part of his will in this world, his knowledge, control, and wisdom would not be weakened by the absence of his true body. The pale blue psionic energy on Magneto faded little by little. Revealing the human skin underneath, the psionic metal armor slowly peeled off from his body. Beside him, Scarlet Witch carefully controlled her ability. The dark red magic dissipated in the air, and the unstable energy in Magneto's body quickly calmed down. In the gene chain in his body, those genes that did not belong to humans began to degenerate and fundamentally break up and recombine. In Magneto's violent trembling, all the changes were perfect, and the genetic mutation selected the 1 in a billion probability and began to steadily degenerate. What is probability? In terms of dimensions, it was the 4-dimensional timeline that was decided at the 5-dimensional level. In terms of time, it was the possibility of what was going to happen in the next second. The future was filled with endless possibilities and probabilities. Every different probability represented a brand new timeline. Looking at the future from the present, it was all made up of probability clouds. A coin was thrown into the sky, and according to the various possibilities it fell, there would be different futures. When the future became the present, the probability cloud collapsed into a timeline. And Scarlet Witch's power was chaos magic. It was the power of controlling probability. She could choose the outcome of the collapse of the probability cloud and let the world find the reason itself. It was a powerful ability that directly determined the future. The ability to control cause and effect was chaos magic. Chaos represented infinite possibilities. Magic represented the power to realize this possibility. Just like now, Walter hoped that Magneto's transformation would reach the most perfect state, so no matter how small the probability, it would happen to Magneto. Of course, Walter's chaos magic had its flaws, even though it was omnipotent. Although this ability was omnipotent, the lower the probability, the more power it took to realize it. This ability first needed to see all kinds of possibilities in the future, then lock onto the outcome that Walter needed, and the timeline would naturally be established. It could be said that Walter determined the outcome of things, and the reason would naturally be filled. This would become an inevitability in the law of cause and effect. If Walter could see the endless future, then she would be the one to decide the fate of the entire universe. This universe would be one dimension lower than her. If Walter could control the entire past, then she could lock onto the probability of what happened in the past, turning the already determined inevitability into an unknown probability again, returning the entire universe to the past, choosing a new timeline, and changing the current world. Every time I see you, I feel like I'm old. Magneto sighed. Walter sat on his father's knees. Although he was very young, his eyes were filled with the vicissitudes of life. After so many years, I've come to terms with many things. My disagreement with Professor X, my hatred for humans. There's only one thing I can't let go of. Magneto clenched his fist and said emotionally, "That's the future of our race. We're mutants, not celestials." He stood up from the chair and looked out the window. The spaceship was traveling at high speed, but he could already see the 9 planets that had been orbiting since ancient times, shining under the sun. The familiar magnetic fluctuations made Magneto's hands tremble slightly. Under the electromagnetic waves that were comparable to a space telescope, the blue planet was suddenly visible. On Earth, Chen-Ong had already felt that familiar mental fluctuation, that unyielding will to fight. "Lend me your hammer." Chen-Ong greeted Odin. Holding Mjolnir upside down, he gently knocked on the void in front of him. A black hole silently melted out of the space, devouring all the electromagnetic waves that radiated from it. Chen-Ong used Mjolnir's powerful mass to distort space to form a black hole, pulling the space to a relative extreme of curvature. It was like opening a wormhole in space, and he could instantly reach the range of Mjolnir's mass. This was the Einstein-Rosen bridge, which was also known as the Rainbow Bridge by the Asgardians. However, the miracle that the Asgardians needed to use large machinery to accomplish, Chen-Ong only needed to use Mjolnir's half-finished black hole to do it. Even more extreme, Chen-Ong could do it with his own power. Chapter 211. Jordaheim was a dead planet. It was covered with dark blue glaciers. Strong winds passed through the ice, and oddly shaped icicles whistled in the wind. As far as the eye could see, it was a monotonous blue. It was like a lifeless land of death. Neptune was 30 times farther from the Sun than Earth, and its solar radiation intensity was only 1% of Earth's. Therefore, the temperature here was below -200 degrees Celsius all year round. It was a forbidden zone for life, and the barrenness of species was comparable to the extreme environment of Earth. Only magical species like the frost giants could survive here. But today, Jordaheim welcomed a group of uninvited guests. Magneto walked on the ice and snow on his way to the frost giants' settlement area. Although he only had a human body, Magneto's body was covered with an electromagnetic layer 30 feet in diameter, enough to allow him to move freely in this environment. He could already apply his ability to the atomic level, and the title of Magneto was more of a nostalgia for him. Matter was infinitely subdivided under his control. Even the fragile human body could receive the oxygen, radiation, and gravity adjustments from the electromagnetic layer. It could be said that Magneto was carrying the best spacesuit with him. Wanda? Are we almost there? Magneto took a deep breath and asked. The frost giant King Laufey is just ahead. Because of Loki, the frozen magic box has returned to his hands. Wanda was exposed to the extreme frost, moving freely as if the cold ignored her flesh and blood. Magneto looked in the direction of Earth and confirmed with Wanda again. Are you sure he will come here? Wanda, you have to help me choose the only possibility. As long as we have the possibility of defeating him, we will win. At this time, every choice is crucial to us, because the future lies in the slightest bit of it. My ability ensures that every choice we make is the most correct. Only here can we contain him to the greatest extent and create a favorable situation for us. Among the countless possibilities on Earth, there is a 91.2% chance that we will all die. And in the remaining 9.7%, the final outcome is also failure. In Wanda's perception, the world seemed to be divided into countless parts. Her senses wandered in the river of time, and the shadows of the world overlapped into countless layers of light and shadow in her eyes. Walter could see herself and the elite team of mutants. The group of people who descended on Earth soon encountered Chen-Ong, and then a fierce conflict ensued. She could see that most of these shadows had met the members of the Avengers, and they were cooperating with each other. They also clashed fiercely because of their different ideologies. As time continued to move forward, the illusions began to shatter one after another. The mutants joined forces with the Avengers to fight against the apocalypse. The moon in the sky opened up a Skynet base. The mutants sleeping on the dark side of the moon woke up and turned the Earth into a giant insect nest. In order to save Earth from the hands of the apocalypse, the Avengers were forced to fight to the death with the mutated squad. In the end, the team's illusions were destroyed in a cruel battle. The mutants fought against the apocalypse alone. Magneto was killed by the apocalypse at the first moment. The plague lurking in the sea of consciousness of all creatures on Earth infected through the mind. It caused the mutants to die one by one. The illusions were destroyed. This time, Walter was prepared to perish together with the apocalypse. The moment he arrived on Earth, he only had time to see Chen-Ong before the illusions were destroyed. Once again, Magneto was prepared to detonate the sun and destroy Earth. 12 light-years away from the solar system, the Milky Way suddenly flashed violently. The billions of stars reconstructed by Skynet extended their turrets and exploded simultaneously. The illusions were destroyed. The professor's mind joined forces with Magneto from countless light-years away. The two of them created a huge mental storm, trying to change the personality and mind of all intelligent life in the solar system. In the end, it led to death. The illusions were destroyed. The last time, Walter thought of all ways to maximize the advantage of the situation. The Avengers were their allies. The true bodies of the 5 universe gods descended, and the entire astral race returned. In the end, the 4 horsemen all woke up. In the end, Walter only saw the apocalypse revive in the endless light, and a vast war descended. The illusions were still destroyed. Countless possibilities, countless paths for the future. Walter desperately searched for a turning point on the probability cloud, but the result was death after death. Again and again, the illusions were destroyed. Again and again, he saw his father and best friend die. In the end, Walter realized that as long as they left Earth, the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse would not appear. After the best choice, they came to Neptune, Jordaheim. The apocalypse is very well prepared on Earth. There, he can get the support of the 4 horsemen at any time. At this point, Walter paused and replied, "And he's already here." Hearing this, Magneto closed his eyes. "The apocalypse, where are you?" While thinking, the electromagnetic field controlled by Magneto has spread to the entire planet, between atoms, and the electromagnetic force in the atomic nucleus continues to spread in all directions in his perception. The only elemental substance that makes up matter, the endless atoms, provides endless energy and carriers for this electromagnetic field. The electromagnetic field swept across the surface of the planet, then spread to the atmosphere, and by relying on the material structure of the yard, it spread to the core of the planet. All the matter that made up the planet, including the body components that made up the frost giants, were included in this electromagnetic field. In just an instant, Magneto completed the search and monitoring of the different radiation and electromagnetic waves of the entire planet, using all known means to scan the electromagnetic properties of matter. No. Magneto opened his eyes and couldn't find Chen-Ong at all. Although Walter had already hinted to him, if Chen-Ong didn't want to, he would be like dark matter, no one could find him. "Come out!" Magneto suddenly shouted to the side. A huge shadow flashed across the glacier, and a dark blue-skinned giant walked out from the depths of the glacier, looking down at Magneto and the others. Behind him, there were countless similar shadows, appearing and disappearing nearby. "Isn't this where you should be? Who are you people?" The tallest man among the frost giants stood on the glacier opposite Magneto. "Frost giants." Magneto looked at them coldly. "Before the apocalypse comes, all of you, get out of here!" There was no warmth in Magneto's words. Before this, he had already confirmed with Walter that no one would be able to help them. On the contrary, these people would only have a negative impact on them. He needed the frost giants' ice magic box, but he didn't need them themselves. In a battle at this level, the more variables there were, the more disadvantageous it would be for Walter to use his abilities. Because Chen-Ong certainly didn't care about the combat power of the frost giants, but they would interfere with his side a lot. "Are you looking to die?" Following Lauren's shout, countless frost giants appeared from all directions. Just when the frost giant was ready to move because of Magneto's provocation, Scarlet Witch and Iceman shook hands together, and the probability-changing power of chaos magic and Iceman's ability influenced each other and merged, and a faint cold light rose between the two. On the timeline, the energy invaded the future, giving Laufey a sudden feeling of impending disaster. "Our ability combination has not been tested yet, so we urgently need someone to prove it on the spot," Walter said to Laufey. "You can only blame your bad luck," Iceman said. "Iceman can turn everything into frost, but he can't use his ability very successfully, but Walter can help him, among the countless possibilities, to lock on to the one he needs." The frost spread, turning everything into ice and snow. The giants named after the frost turned into countless ice sculptures, still maintaining their appearance when they were alive, but they had long since lost the breath of life. Laufey stood on the glacier, her whole body frozen in place. "Find the ice magic box," Magneto said. Iceman controlled the glacier to send down the dark blue magic box that Laufey had carefully kept and handed it to Walter. Magneto walked straight through the lifelike ice sculptures. Behind him, Daken, Gray, Vulcan, Mr. M, Storm, Quicksilver, Shadowcat, Blink, Iceman, Aurora, Sanctuary, Angel, Golden Pill, and countless mutants elites were preparing for the battle in an orderly manner. Chapter 212. Heimdall stood on the bifrost, watching the Nine Realms as usual, but this time he focused most of his attention on Jordan and Heim. His responsibility was to pay attention to the situation in the universe that threatened the safety of Asgard. Although Odin was still in Midgard, Heimdall could still inform him of the situation with the help of Bifrost. Then after Chen-Ong moved away with Mjolnir, Odin received a message from Bifrost. Heimdall's message came very timely and very short. "The frost giants are all dead, and they were frozen in Jotunheim by a group of suspicious humans." Odin certainly knew how difficult their enemy was. In the battle with the frost giants, he even lost an eye. Although Asgard had the upper hand, the tenacity, toughness, ferocity, and strength of the frost giants still made him feel troubled. But this time, this race seemed to have been directly erased from Jotunheim. Odin did not feel happy when he heard the news. On the contrary, his heart was very heavy. "Continue to monitor these people, now send me back to Asgard." The situation was worse than he had imagined. In the ice field of Jordaheim, the cold wind blew over Laufey's body. It could be seen that the frost giant's body had changed qualitatively. Their somatic cells were translucent, and the texture of the ice was very obvious. Through the slightly blue skin, the unique internal organs and bones of the frost giants could be clearly seen. They had turned into ice sculptures. The frost giants' body tissues had an extremely high resistance to cold. They could maintain the flexibility of their body tissues in extremely low temperatures, preventing them from freezing. However, this phenomenon was no longer as simple as freezing. This meant that the composition of their bodies had changed. Odin's heart sank to the bottom of the sea. He knew what this ability to change the underlying material base of the world represented. The Omega Mutant Iceman, his influence on the movement of atoms could be achieved without doing any work, and he completely ignored the laws of matter. He could create infinite ice anytime and anywhere, and at the same time, he could change the nature of matter and turn any matter into ice. This meant that the Iceman had the ability to freeze time and freeze all matter at absolute zero. Create matter. Shake the foundation of the universe to create something out of nothing. Alchemy that completely changes the nature of matter. These three abilities were almost taboo. The Iceman could not use his abilities normally. In fact, his performance was not as good as some alpha-level mutants. He couldn't perfectly display his strength, let alone develop his untapped potential. But under the control of Scarlet Witch's chaos magic, it locked onto the limits of Iceman's ability. Over here, there are as many as 12 mutants with the same or slightly worse potential as Iceman. Some of them were Omega-level mutants, while others had special potential. With the help of the Scarlet Witch, they were able to survive. He used his strongest state to display his strength. And when Chen Ong faced them, he didn't mean to hide at all. He simply and directly stood opposite Magneto. On a vast expanse of white land, a person walking towards them was very conspicuous. If they were on Neptune, they would be even more conspicuous. Chen Eng's appearance hasn't changed much. Although he is wearing Dr. Doom's mask, Magneto still recognized him at a glance. It can only be said that the memory that Chen Ong brings to him is too unforgettable. Chen Ong did not plan to wear a mask to face his old friend. The silver-white mask on his face shattered into tiny grains of sand and fell down. He also changed back into his previous attire. Chen Ong looked like a slightly young Oriental man, which even surprised the elites of the new generation of mutants on the opposite side. When Magneto saw him, the expression on his face suddenly froze. He seemed to have returned to that era, to his nightmares day and night, once again witnessing the history of being manipulated, controlled, and crushed. Magneto took a deep breath. Although he was mentally prepared, he suddenly saw the shadow in his heart that had been there for a long time. It still takes some time to reconcile. Although he has imagined the scene of them meeting again thousands of times in his mind, Magneto is still a little overly excited. Of course, it was a memory mixed with anger and fear. Apocalypse, we meet again. Magneto's voice was not calm. We meet again, old friend. Chen Ong smiled and said, only this time I am no longer Apocalypse. I am Dr. Destruction, S.H.I.E.L. D's chief wanted fugitive, the controller of Skynet. I know. Magneto nodded and said, I have seen the other Apocalypse, but I will still call you Apocalypse. Just think of it as the stubbornness of the old. The world has changed too fast. Familiar names remind me of the past. Magneto adjusted his posture, and the little movements with the habit of celestial disappeared. Standing in front of Chen Ong was an old man from the 20th century. Professor X disagreed with me. He tried to stop me from coming to see you, but I knew that we would meet eventually. Time can't stop us, space can't stop us, and other things are the same. There are some things we need to end, so there is no point in hiding. And I don't want to escape. You are right. Chen Ong agreed. If you wait any longer, you will have no way to escape. Even in this universe, we have never gotten rid of your control and influence, so we are destined to face you again, because the four horsemen and the other apocalypse will not exist without meaning. Their meaning can only be reflected on us. Besides, for freedom and survival, we have no choice. Magneto's slightly bent waist suddenly straightened, and he stood in front of Chun-Ong and said, "So I told him. Our world is just a huge cage. We have never been free, and from the moment we left our homes, the free air we breathed was an illusion. The truth is, we live in a lie. A complete scam and lie created by you." Magneto's gray hair was trembling a little. He looked at Chun-Ong, and under his calm expression, he suppressed huge emotional fluctuations. Wanda stepped forward anxiously and stood in front of him. Magneto pulled her away. He was waiting for Chun-Ong's answer. "Do you believe in fate?" Chun-Ong asked an unrelated question. "No." "Why not?" Magneto's body tightened in an instant, and he looked up at Chun-Ong and said word by word, "The so-called fate refers to involuntary actions, and I don't like this concept." Chun-Ong smiled, and he recited in a movie dialogue, "I know what you mean. Let me tell you why you are here. You are here because you have realized something. Something you can't explain. But you can feel it. This feeling has been with you your whole life. There must be something wrong with this world, and although you can't say it, it must exist. This feeling is like a thorn in your heart, making you restless. It is this feeling that brought you to me. Do you know what I am saying?" Magneto's tears gushed out at once, and turbid tears slid down his cheeks, and his hands trembled uncontrollably, making him look less like a powerful warrior and more like an old man in his twilight years. He suppressed his anger and gritted his teeth with the last of his sanity and asked, "Dimensional reduction matrix? Do you want to know what it is?" Chun-Ong didn't seem to feel guilty, and he replied calmly, "Do you think the Prophet bought you enough time? Or if you escape from this universe, the dimensional reduction will no longer exist? Skynet is the carrier of dimensional reduction, and the main program is completed by the Four Horsemen. Since the Four Horsemen still exist, what makes you think you have escaped? Do you think the Four Horsemen are tools for me to control you? Do you think it is a disaster that destroys civilization at will? In fact, they are just a program of the entire main body. What really controls you is the world that blinds your eyes so that you can't see the truth. Is the world we are in now an illusion or a reality?" Magneto couldn't help but ask. "It's not as bad as you think. If I just transferred your consciousness to a low-latitude universe, why would I have to make it so complicated? You can all create quantum computers and virtual worlds. What's the point of me storing your civilization on my hard drive?" Chun-Ong comforted him. "I just want to try to reduce the dimensions of a universe, which means that I need to thoroughly understand this universe in order to master the two orders of information that overflows the universe. In fact, it is not easy to reduce the dimensions of an objectively existing world, and I have only completed half of it. The 5 universe gods are a dimension higher than this universe, and with their existence you still have hope. As long as this single universe and its multiverse are not separated from each other, you still have hope." Magneto's expression didn't improve at all, and he sneered. "Why do you have to tell us so much?" "Because I want you to win. For experiments, sometimes failure is more valuable than success. If the experiment goes to this point and I still fail, then I will gain more than success. Not only do I have the data of dimensional reduction, but I also have the valuable experience of civilization upgrading." Chun-Ong looked at him sincerely and said to him in an extremely sincere tone, "I sincerely wish you success in this." He raised his finger and said, "Now that I exist in this universe, I am only in the same dimension as you. In essence, I am still inferior to the 5 gods. There are 3 key points in the whole plan. First, the center of the multiverse is Earth. Second, the core of the dimensional reduction program is Apocalypse. Third, I am the adjuster of the dimensional reduction program." Chapter 213. When Chen Ong told Wang De the cruel truth about the mutants and the world, the illusion in Wang Da's eyes began to collapse. This meant that the future was going to be greatly changed. Chaos magic could lock onto the one Walter wanted among the infinite possibilities and directly change the future. However, the harsher the conditions were, the more the chaos magic used to distort reality. Just the infinite possibilities of the future was an astronomical number. The energy and time needed to calculate, store, and remember were all consuming her life. So, even Walter could not stay in that state all the time. Even before this life and death battle, Walter did not dare to use her full power. She only kept the chaos magic output at a relatively high frequency. Within 30 seconds, she could see all the possibilities in the future. Within a day, she could see more than 99% of the possibilities. However, the further the timeline, the less information she could obtain. A year later, she could only see 60% of the possibilities. 10 years later, this number would drop to 50%. In other words, Walter would ignore half of the possibilities 10 years later. 30 seconds before Chen Ong told her the secret, Walter saw that there was only a 1 in 10,000 chance of this coming true. However, within 30 seconds, this possibility had increased to 60%. But it wasn't until Chen Ong really told Magneto the truth that the future changed dramatically. In the future 1 year later, the heroes of Earth, who originally occupied an important position, were suddenly marginalized. More and more interstellar civilizations appeared in the future pages. The vast interstellar war, the reappearance of mutants in this world, and the 5 great gods of the universe riding on their dependents, turned the galaxy into a Shuraba. Countless famine mutants started to explode on the dark side of the moon and turned into greedy Zergs, turning dozens of galaxies into insect nests. The mysterious Death Knights and the Goddess of Death became an incomprehensible, illogical, chaotic phenomenon of the universe. They pulled the dead civilizations out of the world of the dead and revived them in this universe. Angels with endless bright wings hatched from billions of stars. The sun spread its wings. Infinite multiverses and infinite Sephiroth were born from it. They gathered on Earth to become one and only Seraph. They ruled dozens of galaxies. Angels hatched from infinite stars and planets. They were emissaries born from the plague of the planet. These nightmarish existences greatly impacted Walter's mind. Hunger, pestilence, and death. Just one look at them would cause one to suffer from a strong spiritual corruption. With Walter's pure essence, looking at these existences that were as glorious as the sun caused considerable damage to her spirit, not to mention that there were 5 universe gods who were on the same level as her. Ah! At this point, Walter felt as if his brain was suddenly being bombarded by endless, incomprehensible, and completely chaotic information that was filled with wisdom and truth. She felt the soreness, itchiness, swelling, and extreme pain from the depths of her brain, making her want to smash her head with an axe, incinerate the brain with fire. But this was not the cruelest part. What was worse was the information about existences that were completely different from humans, the existence of the universe gods, and the nature of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. These non-human radiated information almost destroyed her personality. Wanda! Magneto saw Scarlet Witch's twisted expression like a ghost, and the painful voice that was unbearable to listen to, and hurriedly held his daughter in his arms. "Father, I'm in so much pain." Walter clutched him tightly, enduring the pain from the depths of his soul. "Aso de gen Norona Kavaguda." Walter's body began to twitch in Magneto's arms. She made some strange syllables from the depths of her throat, making people feel a chaotic evil aura spreading from her. "What's going on? How could this be? What's wrong with her? Please tell me, what's wrong with her?" In his anxiety, Magneto couldn't care about anything else. He directly asked Chen Ong. Chen Ong told Magneto regretfully, "She left." Chaos magic is a powerful force, but it is also a dangerous existence. It is impossible for humans to master this power. only by sublimating themselves like me, or by throwing themselves into chaos and becoming an evil god of chaos like the great old ones, can they master this power. Every time she uses her ability, she gets closer to the evil god. Until she completely loses her human characteristics, she becomes another great outer god. Magneto fell into silence. He held his daughter tightly and suddenly looked up and asked, "Is there any way to save her?" Chen-Ong shook his head and said, "This is the inevitable end of her soul. Chaos magic is her essence. We can only delay the process, but we can't change the result. Going crazy is just her initial appearance." "Then can she get the power to fight against you?" Magneto had regained his composure. He stood up with Walter in his arms. "Of course." Chen-Ong smiled and said, "The great old ones are a way of existence in a higher dimension. Of course she can get the power to fight against me." "That's good." Magneto's eyes were really sad. He put his hand on Walter's head and said sadly, "I love you, Walter. But you are no longer our compatriot." A powerful electromagnetic wave vibrated out of Magneto's hand and completely destroyed the personality in Walter's brain. "Father, why?" Walter's personality left one last question. Despair, disbelief, and the pain of faith collapsing made it hard for the others present to accept. Daken grabbed Walter's body from behind and asked Magneto, "What are you doing?" "She is no longer our compatriot," Magneto replied coldly. "Even if she is, she can be sacrificed for the future of the mutants. We need her power to fight against the apocalypse." After Walter's personality dissipated, the side of the great old ones completely took over. There were no human shortcomings, and the ultimate power of chaos magic was used perfectly. The endless chaos information of the future was easily accepted. The powerful chaos magic had truly reached the level of distorting everything and changing the universe with a single thought. Daken and the newborn Scarlet, which saw the end of the endless possibilities of the future. It was a patch of darkness, and countless bright futures were drawing closer to this patch of darkness. An endless loneliness, endless void, endless darkness. The only thing that existed was the nothingness of nothingness. The timelines that spread out to countless possibilities were gathered together and sunk into this darkness. It was as if the ending of a story had been revealed, and the infinite possibilities of the future collapsed into the only darkness. 80%, 90%. The darkness gradually swallowed all the futures, leaving only a tiny bit of light. That was the infinitesimal unknown. The one that escaped. The one that prevented this world from becoming a book, a few movies, and a fixed collection in Chen-Ang's hands. It was the one ray of hope that kept this world from being dimensionally reduced. It was the variable supported by the 5 universe gods and the protagonists of this universe. The time for this darkness to descend was 10 years later. There was an infinite future in these 10 years. 10 years later, there was only a dark future and a sliver of other possibilities. This world only has a sliver of hope. A bone-chilling coldness rose in the hearts of Daken and the Scarlet Witch. Even the madness of the great old ones was interrupted. This evil god of endless chaos, if dimensionally reduced, was as good as dead. At this moment, the entire world only had one enemy. In the darkness, everything disappeared. There was only an invisible shadow flipping through a book. The sound of pages flipping was crisp and melodious. Even in the darkness, Daken and the Scarlet Witch could imagine such a scene. A person who looked exactly like Chen-Ong was flipping open a book in the void. The pages quickly slid past his fingertip. Every page was a time and space, and every page was a world. The thick oil paint painted them vividly and exaggeratedly, telling the story of this world. Finally, Chen-Ong closed the title page, revealing the name of the book, Marvel. Kill him. Chapter 214. The first to react was not Magneto. In a femtosecond relative to the low-speed universe, Quicksilver arrived in front of Chen-Ong, carrying enough energy to destroy all matter and even space, and slammed a punch towards Chun-Ong. Quicksilver is really fast. Even at the speed of light in a femtosecond, it can only travel 3 microns, less than 1/100th of a strand of hair. It takes 1 to 1 femtosecond for an atom in a molecule to complete a typical vibration. It usually takes hundreds of femtoseconds to complete a rapid chemical reaction. The interaction between light and the pigment on the retina, the process of producing vision, takes about 2 femtoseconds. This kind of speed could only appear when the space between the two of them was extremely distorted. Even so, Quicksilver's absolute speed was close to 100 nanoseconds per meter, which was close to the speed of light. Any matter that possessed such speed would have terrifying destructive power. Under the conditions of this speed, every time the mass of the matter increases by 1 gram, the energy required will increase geometrically. At Quicksilver's current speed, the high temperature, high pressure, strong energy and force generated by hitting the matter can directly trigger the nuclear reaction of the matter's atoms, and the energy generated by the impact with Chun-Ang's body is enough to blow up the entire Neptune. Anyone who hurts Walter must die. Compared to the low-speed universe, Quicksilver has completely become independent from the timeline. He can think, observe, and kill Chun-Ong with the fastest speed and reaction. Just a little bit more, Quicksilver thought this way. This distance for him was just a thought, and even his body didn't have time to react. But in the eyes of others, almost all of them felt a cold shiver all over their bodies. Just in front of Chun-Ong, Quicksilver was frozen in the void less than a step away, 1 step away, and it became a natural moat. His eyes focused and stared at Chun-Ang's position, even with a confident smile on his face, as if he could cut open Chun-Ang's chest in the next second. No one knows Quicksilver's ability better than the people present. Quicksilver was cut apart by him from the low-speed universe. Scarlet Witch whispered. She was the only one present who could fully understand the reason, and she easily got the answer from the infinite probability of the future. Quicksilver's ability allows him to enter a parallel universe near the speed of light when he accelerates, and the space of the two universes completely overlaps. The speed of that universe is several times that of our universe. Quicksilver was able to affect the activity of matter in the real universe through the near-light-speed universe. But now, the near-light-speed universe has been separated from the real universe by apocalypse, causing the time difference between the two to be reversed. Chun-Ong smiled, bypassed Quicksilver, who was frozen in the parallel universe, and arrived in front of everyone. Most people couldn't help but take a few steps back, instinctively wanting to avoid it. Quicksilver was more dangerous than most of the people here. In the hands of this person, it was like child's play. The new evil god that was born from Walter's body didn't even have the time to display her insanity before something even crazier than her arrived. Chaos magic frantically warned of the future's despair and darkness. Even with the chaos evil god's unreasonable evil, they couldn't bear the horror of being written in a book and toying with fate as they pleased. Ah! A sharp scream shook the minds of the others, and they fell into chaos. Chaos magic jumped between one possibility after another. Just a few steps away from Chun-Ong, Scarlet Witch and everyone present attacked Chun-Ong. Everyone did their best, and Neptune only lasted for less than a breath before exploding into a speck of dust in the universe. But after 1 minute and 18 seconds, Scarlet Witch's vision turned into darkness. "I will die. I will die." Chaos magic frantically warned Scarlet Witch in her heart. 1 more minute and 18 seconds and I will die. There was no time to think about anything else. Scarlet Witch desperately concentrated and operated her ability. Chaos magic peeked at everything in the future probability cloud with unprecedented efficiency, trying to lock in a safe ending. "I won't die." Scarlet Witch frantically insisted on this belief in her heart, trying to distort reality. Locking in the future world where she was still alive, under the distortion of chaos magic, there was no reality that couldn't be manipulated. What if I don't exist in the future 1 minute and 18 seconds later? Scarlet Witch erased her future self and completely disappeared from the universe's timeline a minute later. In the 2-hour future, she didn't exist at all, and she didn't appear until 2 hours and 1 minute later. Directly eliminated from the concept of time. 1 minute later, Scarlet Witch appeared 2 hours later. In the future probability cloud, she clearly saw that the other mutants still faced Chen-Ong. It's just that this time they failed even earlier. Magneto only existed for a breath and disintegrated in an instant. A large group of genes collapsed because of excessive personality fluctuations. Iceman was completely unable to exert his abilities and evaporated in cosmic rays. There were also Vulcan, Mr. M, Storm, Quicksilver, Shadowcat, Blink, Iceman, Aurora, Sanctuary, Angel, and Gold Pill. All of them were easily defeated by Chen-Ong in less than 5 minutes. Some disappeared completely and some were captured. Death Marquis persisted the longest. He called on himself in the multiverse to help and tried to erase the reality where Chen-Ong was, but Chen-Ong erased him from reality. How is this possible? Scarlet Witch couldn't believe it. This scene really subverted her understanding. Even if she looked down on the abilities of other mutants, she had to admit that there were many mutants that even she was inferior to. In the direction of using his abilities, Magneto far surpassed her. He, who had completely mastered the electromagnetic force, was almost a god in the single universe. Vulcan's temperature control, Iceman's material subversion, Storm's cosmic storm. There was also Death Marquis, who even she couldn't see through, who could create and control various existences in the multiverse out of thin air. He could travel between parallel universes and destroy reality effortlessly, but he only lasted a few minutes. Their various strange abilities and applications, combined together, could completely subvert the entire world. Even she couldn't face the enemy head-on, let alone solve all of them so easily. Without my help, they failed even faster. Last time, I was the first to die, but in the future I saw, they lasted at least 2 hours, and this time it only took 5 minutes. That monster! Last time, it was like he was playing with us. No, it should be studying us. Then why didn't he do it this time? Scarlet Witch looked at the calm expression of future Chen-Ong, and a shocking guess flashed in her heart. Could it be? He has already studied it. Looking at the future Chen-Ong standing quietly in the same place, Scarlet Witch screamed wildly in her heart. Impossible. He can't have experienced the world just now. That only exists in the future of probability clouds. But Chen-Ang's performance has made her believe that this time Chen-Ong has a direct connection with the one that destroyed her in 18 seconds. They are the same. After everyone failed, Chen-Ong glanced at Scarlet Witch's perspective, and the world fell into darkness again. Chapter 2:15. The Scarlet Witch did not expect that even though she had deleted her existence in the future, she still could not escape the fate of death. She was supposed to reappear after disappearing for 2 hours and 1 minute, because she had cut off her time from the universe for more than 2 hours. But peeking into the future showed that as soon as she disappeared, she would be completely erased from this world. Amidst the infinite possibilities, without any warning, without any room for change, she welcomed the arrival of darkness. The whole attack is divided into 2 stages. The first stage is non-existent time, which is the 2 hours and 1 minute that I cut off. During this time, I no longer exist in this world. The second stage is reflowing time, which is the time when I leave the non-existent state and die. The Scarlet Witch drew the timeline of the whole thing in her mind, and then locked the problem on the second stage, because she was convinced that no one could hurt someone who did not exist. The arrival of darkness is 1 minute and 18 seconds after the start of the second stage. My state of time is exactly 2 hours and 1 minute ago, plus the time when I disappeared. It is actually the same time as the last time. There are 2 possibilities. Either he killed me with some kind of spiritual illusion after I appeared, or he killed me in 1 minute and 18 seconds. Because I cut off more than 2 hours of time, he killed me 2 hours later. When I reappear, because of the space-time maze, there are two me. One is dead, and the other will die in 1 minute and 18 seconds. So I won't appear and will lose my perception in 1 minute and 18 seconds. The Scarlet Witch had to admit that things were developing toward the worst situation. Based on the current direct probability, whether she raised her hands to surrender and ushered in the dimensional reduction catastrophe 10 years later, or fought back and died in 1 minute and 18 seconds, the outcome was hopeless. The situation had developed to the worst point, although for the Scarlet Witch, it was somewhat ridiculous. But it had been proven that even the magic of chaos could not change this fact. If it was the original Scarlet Witch, she would definitely be helpless, but after being swallowed by chaos, the Scarlet Witch really had the possibility of breaking free from this fate. The current ability of the Scarlet Witch could only manipulate the magic of chaos to distort the present reality to change the future. She could not change the time and space that had been determined in the past. And the ability of the magic of chaos could only change the first cause, which was the logical pattern of cause-effect. He could change the cause and obtain the result, or he could directly change the result and create the cause. On top of that, there was the second and third cause, which was the cause repeated distortion. With her original ability, she could only change the outcome of the future. But the third cause would give her not only the ability to change the outcome of the future. Furthermore, it was a heaven-defying ability to know the result of the second cause based on this result. Just like flipping a coin to make a choice, the original Scarlet Witch could distort reality and choose any outcome, heads, tails, or anything else. But now, not only would she know the outcome of any future, she would also know the outcome of the future after she distorted reality. The difficulty of processing light information would increase by several levels, not to mention the fact that he could go back to the past. The ability to distort reality by changing the cause of the past. The Scarlet Witch, who possessed the power of chaos, had countless opportunities to change the future. In theory, she was omniscient. It was omnipotent. Every time she distorted reality, it would cause the probability cloud in the future to change, and it would give her another chance to find the result she wanted. Until it locked onto the one and only perfect world line. Walter separated the futures one by one and carefully screened them. Looking at Chun-Ang's half-smile on the screen, she had a subtle premonition in her heart. She felt that everything she did was under the control of that man. It was as if he was also in this infinite space and time, distorting the probability cloud and twisting every possibility into the direction he wanted. In the space-time illusion, she directly distorted the entire world. If she couldn't change Chun-Ang, she might as well create a new world line. Find a future without Chun-Ang, lock onto the effect of Chun-Ang's non-existence, and let the world provide the cause. The mutant Franklin created a new universe. In just 3 days, the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse appeared there, and then the small universe, that was in a lower latitude than the real universe, became a new project of the apocalypse experiment. All the mutants were still imprisoned in that low-latitude universe. The cause of Chun-Ang's non-existence couldn't be established, but at this moment, the Scarlet Witch was no longer worried. She believed that the future had infinite possibilities. No matter how powerful Chun-Ang was, as long as there was a future that wasn't in his control, she could make that future come true with the power of chaos. Chun-Ang was like a boss in a single-player game that could be saved countless times. No matter how powerful he was, in front of the Scarlet Witch, who could be reborn countless times, he would inevitably be defeated. What's more, this player didn't save the game, but directly locked the game through the game's backend. And the universe was destroyed by the power of the Phoenix, and the apocalypse restarted the universe. The universe was destroyed by the 5 gods, and the apocalypse restarted the universe. The universe was destroyed by the Hulk, and the apocalypse restarted the universe. The universe was shaken by Magneto, and the apocalypse restarted the universe, one by one, crazy, subverted to the impossible, and finally ushered in destruction, either at the hands of the four horsemen of the apocalypse, or by mutants or other powerful existences in the universe. But it was useless. Every variable was locked on to an ultimate program for destruction. Then the apocalypse appeared. The first and last mutant, the one named by Chen-Ong, always came out to clean up the mess. Everything returned to nothingness, and then everything was born again, and the universe started again. This was the ultimate defense of Chen-Ang's laboratory. In order to prevent unexpected accidents from happening in the experiment, the experimenters would usually introduce the accident into a prepared and fixed program. This kind of situation was usually the simplest destruction program, destroying the universe and burying all kinds of accidents. Then, the experiment would restart. The four horsemen of the apocalypse usually performed the program, and sometimes the apocalypse would do it himself, but Chen-Ong always watched from the sidelines because the destruction program was also part of the experiment. The player, Scarlet Witch, opened the cheat program, but found there was no happy in this game. All endings led to destruction or control. The developer of the game program, Marvel. The cracker of the game program, Chen-Ong. The runner of the game program, Apocalypse. Jumping in the endless timelines, the Scarlet Witch frantically searched for all kinds of different possibilities in this world, but it was as if there was a ghost staring at her. As long as the world exceeded the normal plot, it would all be destroyed, and the only plot that Chen-Ong gave was the reduction of the dimension of the universe. The world that Scarlet Witch experienced exhausted countless possibilities in the future. S.H.I.E.L.D's Sentinel program was successful. The Avengers split into two camps. Loki framed Thor, triggering a war between Asgard and Earth. The Avengers teamed up with Skynet to fight Ultron. Thanos collected 6 Infinity Stones and came to Earth. But the slim hope did not appear at all. So 10 minutes after the Chaos Magic was fully activated, Scarlet Witch's Chaos side chose to self-destruct, and the personality infected by Chaos gave up trying and returned to Chaos. In front of Magneto and others, Scarlet Witch opened her eyes again and pushed away the large group of people who wanted to help her. She glanced at the world blankly and suddenly asked Chen-Ong, "Are the possibilities of the future really infinite?" Chen-Ong nodded and said, "Yes, but there is a limit to what you can see, and the possibilities you can see are not infinite. So even in the infinite possibilities, I can't get rid of your control? Our level of life is the same, but the volume is different. The world line that you can cover is already under my control. We are like shadows covering time and fate. The reason why you failed is that you have never walked out of my field. My future is broader than yours." Scarlet Witch smiled sadly and looked at Chen-Ong and said, "This is not all the future I can create. There is another choice that I have not tried and will never be able to repeat. I choose death. Because only the future after her death could not be distorted by chaos magic, and it was the only ending that she did not expect. She didn't care whether it was under Chen-Ang's control or not, she only cared that it was not under her control." Chapter 216. After the personality infected with chaos self-destructed, Walter's personality regained control of the body, but in the face of a hopeless future, she chose to die and let everything lead to an unknown ending. Screech. Chen-Ong watched in surprise as Walter slowly lost his breath. He could feel Walter's memories, emotions, and everything that made up her personality being actively infected by Dakin in the form of a meme. This caused a subtle change in Dakin's temperament. The aura on his body became more and more like Walter's. Even though this change was very small, it still did not escape Chen-Ang's eyes. Absorbing other people's personalities? Chen-Ong analyzed it curiously and found that, it seems that Dakin's ability is not imitating other people's personalities, but a kind of inheritance and absorption. I thought Scarlet Witch was finished this time, I didn't expect there to be more. Using the ability of Skynet, Chen-Ong rebuilt a Walter's personality, including extremely detailed memories, simulated emotions, and in a short period of time just now, he deconstructed Walter's overall information, including thinking patterns, value orientations, basic concepts, and logic. It's just that this personality was seriously contaminated by chaos. Because Chen Ong knew more about the chaotic Scarlet Witch, the personality he constructed, basic thinking, and logic were in serious conflict with humans. In the eyes of humans, such a personality could be called extremely anti-human and crazy. It's very similar, but the essence is completely different. The personality absorbed by Dakin is completely different from the one I simulated. If I force this personality into Dakin's head, he will definitely go completely crazy because of mental pollution, but he will definitely not be able to retain Scarlet Witch's abilities. But now, Dakin has begun to come into contact with Walter's abilities. Chen Ong was testing Dakin's abilities, but the group of mutants opposite him had recovered from the shock. In their view, everything in these few minutes was too inexplicable. Walter inexplicably went crazy, Quicksilver was strangely frozen by time stop, and then without saying a word, the crazy Scarlet Witch committed suicide in front of Chen Ong. One completely unexplainable change after another suddenly happened, leaving most of the mutants confused. Except for Magneto and a few others. The others did not notice that this was a battle of life and death that had happened in the past, the future, and the present. It had traversed the endless space-time and universes. Although there wasn't the slightest bit of smoke and fire, the danger was far greater than close combat. Those who understood would naturally be shocked and fearful, but those who didn't even have the qualifications to understand Chen Ong. It was hard to say what role it would play in the upcoming battle. In this game of chess, Chen Ong was not only the player, but he also served as the referee and rule maker. In this game of chess, his golden finger was unparalleled. On the other side, Magneto, Professor X, and a few others could be considered players on the other side. As for the rest of the people who were confused and ignorant, they were just chess pieces that the chess player had casually picked up. The few who could see how terrifying Chen Ong was were, in the original world, the main characters. Only then could he be called a robbery material. Although these people couldn't see the danger that had just happened, they still had some eyesight. At least they knew that Chen Ong, who could force the Scarlet Witch to death in an instant and imprison Quicksilver, was not someone they could provoke. Therefore, although these people were trembling with anger, they suppressed their killing intent. Only Dakin couldn't hold back the burning anger in his heart. He was the son of Professor X. Because of his split personality, his emotions and thinking were very chaotic, and he often showed dangerous aggression. But this was only the influence of his split personalities. In essence, he was the same as Professor X. They were both gentle and kind people. Therefore, he didn't have anyone particularly close to him among the mutants. Only Walter gave him a feeling of empathy. He tried his best to save Walter's life in his arms, even at the cost of giving birth to a new personality. Why can't I save her? A white doctor's uniform appeared on Dakin. The doctor wore glasses and looked up to ask Chen Ong, "I'm the best doctor, there's no one I can't save." Chen Ong raised his eyebrows. He was slightly surprised. Is it because of the strong emotions that triggered the new personality? Chen Ong noticed the white light on Dakin's hand. It seemed to hide an extremely strong life force. This personality is a doctor, and its ability is healing. Seeing the twisted anger in the doctor's eyes, Chen Ong couldn't help but relax for a moment. Are the split personalities also affected by the main personality's emotions and memories? No, it should be said that part of the personality is controlled by the main personality. The weaker and less complete the personality, the stronger the control. After all, most personalities are created because of the main personality's wishes and emotions. Angel also walked in front of Walter, cut her blood vessels, and let the glowing blood sprinkle on her body. Under the joint efforts of the Doctor personality and Angel, Some of the small wounds on Walter's body healed in the blink of an eye. Her face also became ruddy and healthy, but no matter how strong the vitality of the cells was, Walter never had a trace of life. In order to save Walter, a personality with healing ability was created? Chun-Ong could see that Dakin's healing ability was constantly improving. He could guess that it was because of the perfect personality. The doctor personality was constantly shaping his own personality, memory, and emotions. Chun-Ong even knew who he was learning from. It was the angel next to him. Dr. Dakin's temperament, small actions, and even abilities were constantly approaching that of an angel. But no matter how hard Dakin tried, Walter never had the consciousness to open his eyes. He even tried to make Walter's heart beat again, but it was all in vain. "Stop it!" Magneto sighed. "Walter has lost all brain activity. Without brain waves, what you can save is just an empty shell." Angel heard this, and the wound on his hand healed silently. He shook his head with a gloomy expression, trying to comfort Dakin, who was starting to become mentally unstable. The group of doctors carefully laid Walter's body on a flat layer of ice, allowing Neptune's snowstorm to freeze her. The doctor's emotions did not change much. Like a doctor who had seen life and death, he said with slight regret, "We've tried our best." Whether it was Magneto, Angel, or Chun-Ong, they all knew that he was saying this to the real group in this body. After saying that, the personality collapsed. The large group returned to that muddle-headed state. Chun-Ong knew that he was giving birth to a new personality, not the old personality hidden in his body, because whether it was Personality X who manipulated reality, it was different from the old personality. Time-manipulating personality private NKs, self-replicating personality chains, personality Lewis who manipulates atoms, or evil personality Sty who absorbs souls. A telepathic caravan. None of them could kill Chun-Ong. These personalities could not satisfy the crazy killing intent in the large group's heart. He wanted to kill Chun-Ong, no matter the price, he had to kill Chun-Ong. He wanted to create a personality strong enough to kill Chun-Ong. Such a strong personality needed complete emotions, detailed memories, and even a stronger personality and thinking pattern than the normal personality. Even the will and mind had to be beyond ordinary people, even far beyond the main personality. Creating such a personality had the risk of devouring the main personality, but Dakin was willing to make this dangerous choice. For this, he had to pay a high price. Kill himself. "I really want to kill you." The tongue of the large group suddenly became very long. But very quickly, it changed back, and the long-tongued personality disappeared. "But I can't do it." The large group bared their sharp fangs. As the fangs disappeared, another vampire personality died. "We are willing to give up our lives for this." Neptune's crust suddenly trembled violently. The large group roared into the sky, and the ice layers thousands of meters deep emitted a loud crash. Neptune set off ice waves hundreds of meters high. Icebergs could be seen rising from the horizon, and the ice sea collapsed under their feet. For a full 4 to 5 minutes, the personality that controlled the movement of the Earth's crust, small purple good only then did the one die. The stronger the personality, the longer it could last. "Even if we all die, you will pay for your actions." The large group controlled the gamma-ray storm in outer space, sweeping across the surface of Neptune. The ability of personality Borges controlled the powerful gamma-ray. The frequency was higher than 1.5 billion Hertz's electromagnetic photons carried energy of 300 billion joules per microsecond, shooting toward Chun-Ang's eyes. The radiation dose reached 100 trillion rems, and the temperature was as high as 10 million times the temperature of the Sun's core. But in the zero-mass field where the God particle failed, the rays were easily eliminated by Chun-Ong. Chapter 217. Pain-controlled personality Blee-Image could control other people's senses and transmit mental information to the other party unilaterally. It could magnify pain. He was like a living voodoo doll. Chen Ong could feel his injuries 10 times, or even 100 times. Thud. Chen Ong held his chin and looked at him. This is only an incomplete mental connection. Until now, your ability has no secrets in my eyes. If this is all you have, you can't kill me. In the blink of an eye, Chen Ong had taken control of the spiritual connection between the two of them, forcibly erasing most of their 5 senses. I won't die so easily. Bleimage magnified the real feeling of his death countless times and transmitted it to Chen Ong. Humans were perceptive animals. Such a real feeling could completely deceive the physiological subconscious and cause one's body to die. But Chen Ong didn't feel it at all. It's useless. Even if this feeling is 10,000 times stronger, it's useless. Chen Ong didn't even disconnect the mental connection. He let the group clearly feel the process of Chen Ong clearly experiencing the feeling of death. This caused a large number of personalities to die before they could even appear. Don't measure me with your fixed thinking. I'm infinite and multidimensional. In the deepest part of space and time, at the end of your imagination. Use your strongest potential and unleash your infinite imagination. Treat me as God, as everything you can imagine. If you don't have the imagination and determination to kill everything, you can't hurt me at all. Attack me with the belief that you can destroy everything. Right now, your power is too weak. Too weak. You can't even give me a trace of pressure or inspiration. Chen Ong suggested very sincerely. He told the group the method to hurt himself without holding back. This attitude made the group even more crazy. It was hard to say whether it was encouragement or extreme contempt. The consciousness of the personality that controlled atoms descended from the sky and swept across the entire Neptune. His long hair stood up, and a huge invisible force field descended from the sky, shattering the ice land where Chen Ong was. Looking from hundreds of thousands of miles away, one could see that a small part of Neptune's oval body was first peeled off. Then one of the planets began to collapse until half of the planet broke apart. However, this was only the aftermath of the atomic destruction. It was the high-energy wave spread out from the most destructive attack at the center, destroying the entire planet's molecular structure. At the core where the real Chen Ong was, the enormous energy tore apart the atomic nucleus, turning matter into ashes. Go to hell. Lucas completely distorted the spatial structure of that place, making it impossible for matter to exist. In the storm caused by the violent fluctuations of gravity, the dust at the core dispersed, and Chen Ang's figure was surprisingly unscathed. Just destroying matter isn't enough. You need to delve deeper and understand more about this universe. Space, dimensions, force, as well as void and energy. Broaden your horizons. Chen Ong sneered. No matter how much strength you use to attack a shadow, do you think you can hurt me? I want you to use your imagination. Don't limit yourself to the material world. My existence in your eyes is only a shadow of mine in the material world. To you, your physical body is everything, but to me, it's just a shadow. Lucas's next punch pierced through the space in front of Chen Ong and went through Chen Ang's body. He could feel the real feeling of his arm piercing through flesh and blood. He could even sense a part of Chen Ang's existence in the depths of the spatial structure and destroyed that part of space with destructive power. But time was up. Lucas's personality collapsed. The soul-absorbing personality, Tai, appeared. Tai's personality broke through the physical barrier and once again came into contact with Chen Ang's spiritual wall. The soul-devouring ability was instantly activated, and the spiritual wall was visibly contaminated by this ability. It caused Chen Ang's soul to wither and his personality to be destroyed. A huge devouring force not only pulled at Chen Ang's spiritual body, but it also tried to copy Chen Ang's meme. Chen Ang's spirit instantly decayed and his soul withered. His physical body turned to ashes, and Chen Ong, who was opposite Tai's personality, slowly faded and disappeared. You're dead. You're finally dead. The main personality's high vigilance and Stai's arrogance intertwined, making him look like a madman. The main personality no longer looked like a human. His body turned into dark purple energy, and only his eyes looked human. He laughed maniacally, and the ripple of death sent chills down the spines of the onlookers. Just his voice alone made Vulcan, Angel, and the rest feel uncomfortable. They felt like their lives were decaying, and their souls wanted to leave their bodies and enter the main body. Has that person really disappeared? No one dared to confirm it. Therefore, when Chen Ang's figure slowly appeared, everyone thought to themselves, as expected. No one was surprised. This is also the first time I've seen my body and soul disappear at the same time. At least in this time and space, you've touched the deeper part of my existence. Unfortunately, you can't see me. Without a soul and a body, you can't even notice me in this time and space. It's just this timeline, a plank time version of me. You still have to trace the past and the future, cover the entire timeline, and extend to other timelines, forward and forward in the multiverse until you trace all of my past and look into all of my future. Only then will you be able to see a part of me, or rather, a part of me that is complete to a certain extent. Chen Ong smiled encouragingly. I'll count it as you killing me once. Good luck. At least you've covered my shadow. Impossible. Even though there was still time, Stai, who was abandoned by the main personality, still disappeared in disbelief. The time-manipulating personality, Time. The private personality struggled out of his body. On the night of the Fantastic Four's battle with Dumb, inside the portal of the Skynet cube, a hand reached out from inside and pressed on Victor's face. Mr. Fantastic looked at everything in shock. At that moment, a crazy black shadow broke through the void and appeared on the other side of the portal. Time. The private personality's attack shattered the Skynet clone that was enscathed in the sun's core, and space was torn apart. The Fantastic Four exclaimed, "Who are you people?" Dakin looked at them and sighed. "You don't know what kind of demon you've released. He'll destroy the world." At that moment, Dakin felt a hand pressing on the back of his head. The familiar voice rang out behind him. "Is that so? Thank you for telling me this. You're Dakin? Your ability, I want it." From the beginning of everything until now, in the endless space and time, Dakin encountered failure again and again, but he finally saw a part of Chen Ang's true self. The part of the infinite past that gathered on him represented Chen Ang's existence in the past, like a behemoth peeking out of the fog. This alone shocked and terrified Dakin's main personality. He was even forced to forget everything he saw in the next second. This was not done by Chen Ong, but his essence could not bear what he saw. There was also a part of him that Dakin could not detect at all. In the future, when Dakin stepped out of the space-time tunnel, he was evaporated by the golden essence. He could not even remember this, just like he did not explore Chen Ang's future at all. Time. Chapter 218. Very good. Although you're still far from success, I've seen your progress every single time. Try a little harder, and you'll be able to kill me. Chen Ong stood in front of the group, his body clean as if he had just cleaned up. Under the attacks of the group of complex personalities and all kinds of magical abilities, he leisurely strolled to the front of the group. He didn't attack, but he put more pressure on the group. Because up until now, his attacks had been fruitless, and he even needed Chen Ong to open his mouth to encourage him. The group's personalities had begun to become chaotic. Sometimes, in a very short period of time, a large number of personalities would switch, and some contradictory characteristics and personalities would begin to appear on the same personality. Sometimes, Chen Ong would be attacked by several abilities at the same time. This had the effect of 1 + 1 = 2, and the compound ability was even more dangerous, mysterious, and complicated. The telepathic ability combined with any other ability was very powerful, and soon, this ability was fixed on the group. This also meant that the group's second personality, caravans, had begun to merge with the main personality. The self-replicating personality chain and the teleportation personality, Fanya, began to merge, followed by super strength and super speed. Hundreds of super personalities flashed through the space. In Chen Ang's hands, the huge difference in gravity was like a white bolt of lightning, flashing in the large group of people that were divided. He set up a lightning net around him, and the dense net cut anyone who tried to pass into pieces of flesh the size of a finger. The real trump card was a split body controlled by Chen Ang. Just like in a myth, Chen Ang's minute control created a petri dish of a field in the void. Then, he performed a cell surgery so fine that it reached the atomic level, presenting a biochemical modification surgery before everyone's eyes in a brief moment. Soon, the biochemical plague accelerated the division of the split body through infection. The deformed monster modified by Chen Ang had a crushing victory over the large group in terms of reproductive ability. In just a few minutes, this kind of hunter that targeted a large group had surpassed the numbers of a large group of doppelgangers. Its powerful infection ability rendered any of the doppelgangers helpless. Soon, as Chen Ang expected, the split body began to be occupied by different personalities. They inherited the large group's ability. Not only did they have the ability to split, but they could also obtain other abilities through creating personalities. Countless of them looked like large group. In fact, it was not like a large group of splits began to appear, with countless personalities regaining freedom and bodies of their own. Only Chen Ang knew that the main personality of the group was truly at its most dangerous. If these countless personalities tore apart the existence of the main personality, the group would completely lose its sense of self and become a chaotic and crazy split body. He would become a giant monster. It was probably the amalgamation of humanity's craziest, most chaotic, and most epileptic thoughts and personalities. Another chaotic evil god with potential. Chen Ang was very interested. It seemed that the end of every powerful ability was extreme chaos. Those indescribable chaos and madness, in Chen Ang's understanding, seemed to be called the Great Old Ones. Is it because the truth is unknown to human thought patterns? Chen Ang concluded with his own example. Although humans were short-lived, had low intelligence, lacked self-control, and had many flaws in their way of thinking, there was no such thing as a higher level of understanding of human thinking. He had developed from a typical human mind. Nor did such a chaotic situation occur. Roar! One of the splits showed signs of beastification. There was no trace of consciousness in its crimson eyes. Its sharp claws and teeth tore apart the other splits that were close to it, and it began to circle around Chen Ang, looking for an opportunity to kill him. Why can't you hurt me? Because you are not crazy enough. Chen Ang continued to provoke the group. You have to be even crazier. Break through the limits of human thinking, break through the inherent knowledge in your brain. As long as your imagination is unlimited, there is nothing in this universe that can limit you. Chen Ang said loudly, ask your heart, ask that extreme madness, what is restraining you? Don't believe him. Among the large group of doppelgangers, among the large group of splits, a female personality suddenly appeared. She tried to stop the collapse of the main personality, just like how any schizophrenic created a personality to protect themselves. In the mind of the large group, there was also such a protector, a personality X who had the personality to manipulate reality. The split body occupied by personality X was a white woman. She used her powerful telepathic ability to suppress the collapse of the large group's personalities, and at the same time, clear the chaos and crazy thoughts in his mind. Help me suppress the main personality. Now the mental state of the large group is very unstable. He is about to be driven crazy by apocalypse. Personality X had to ask the others for help. Don't you know what Apocalypse wants to do? Magneto. If the large group goes crazy, then he will get a test subject that is more dangerous than the 4 horsemen. If the large group falls into darkness and chaos, he will completely lose his humanity and sanity. I swear it will be more terrifying than Apocalypse. X looked at Magneto and the other mutants and pleaded in despair, "Save him! You must save him!" Magneto waited indifferently. He was like a poisonous snake, waiting for the moment when Chen-Ong showed a flaw. He did not respond at all to the large group's encounter and X's cry for help. It was as if Chen-Ong was the only one in his sight. But the others couldn't wait any longer. When Chen-Ong reappeared, Vulcan seized what he thought was a good opportunity and controlled the ultra-high temperature flames of tens of thousands of degrees to cover every inch of space where Chen-Ong was. All of the mutants present were the ones with the greatest potential and the strongest abilities. Apart from Lady Storm's Word and Magneto, who were humans from the old era who grew up in the apocalypse, the mutants present were all mutants. The mutants of the new era despised and feared Chen-Ong, the legendary Apocalypse and Great Demon. They were so confident in themselves that even if Walter and Quicksilver paid the price with their lives, they seized the opportunity and made a move. But soon they learned a lesson in blood. Before anyone could react, Chen-Ong appeared behind Vulcan. The huge pressure of the gravity ball caused Vulcan's ribs to pierce through his lungs. The white bone stubble pierced through his skin and came out of Vulcan's back. Vulcan opened his mouth and wanted to say something, but the surging blood blocked his throat. He could only make a hissing sound. The other mutants weren't shocked for too long. Angel immediately flew over to catch him, cut his wrist again, and fed him the healing blood. The others also reacted in an instant. The last trace of peace was suddenly broken. Everyone, except for Chen-Ong, launched their most cruel attack with Chen-Ong as the target. Blink flew through the deep space. He held the others and provided them with short-range mobility. Shadowcat began to create temporary teleportation doors according to the training, forming a complete space attack formation. It was obvious that the mutants had prepared for this day for a long time. They cooperated well and everyone used their best abilities. Blink and Shadowcat were the support group. They tried their best to provide the best space structure, control the rhythm and form of attack on the battlefield, and let the other mutants use their abilities effectively. They seemed to know Chen-Ang's ability to control space, so they didn't try to attack through space. Instead, they focused their energy on mobilizing others. Iceman, Vulcan, Storm's Word, and Polar Light should be the suppression group. They poured their firepower on Chen-Ong and maintained the greatest degree of energy suppression. But what they were doing now was a failure. Vulcan was seriously injured. Iceman lost Walter's support and couldn't use his abilities at all. Storm's Word was extremely afraid of Chen-Ong. She didn't seem to believe that she could cause any trouble to Chen-Ong. This resulted in only Polar Light being able to use his full strength in the suppression group. He couldn't do anything alone. Without Quicksilver's control and Walter's chaos magic, the choice of probability was fatal to the mutants. Without Walter's ability, most of the mutants couldn't reach their optimal state. They might not be able to control their abilities, and the interference between each other was also very serious. Chapter 219. On Neptune, the mutants were struggling under the control of Chen-Ong, while on Earth 31 astronomical units away, Loki's plot was close to success. "Father asked me to stop your madness." Thor looked at his brother through the high-strength glass, and he said helplessly, "Don't let him down, Loki." "Let him down?" Loki's expression was wild. He showed an evil smile and whispered to Thor, "How can I let him down? Thor, no one cares about him more than I do. Aren't I sharing a little burden for him? Since he is so afraid of the earth, let me rule it. Since he wants to stop me, why not come in person? Father doesn't have time. Something big happened in Jordaheim, and he has to deal with it." Thor shrugged and said with some satisfaction. Hearing Jordaheim, Loki couldn't help but stand up straight and focus a little more. He pretended not to care and asked, "What can go wrong there? Did the frost giants come? Or did you cause trouble again?" Thor, did you go provoke them again? There are no more frost giants. Thor interrupted him. Loki's hand shook violently, and he asked subconsciously, What? Even he was a little surprised. There are no more frost giants. They were all exterminated, and they were all frozen in the iceberg of Jotunheim. Even Jotunheim was blown up. We have checked, there are no survivors, and the last native life on that planet is gone. Thor didn't notice Loki's lost look. Loki's eyes were a little blurred, and he murmured, There is one more, what? Thor heard him talking to himself. Loki ignored his question and asked him, What happened? I don't know, it seems that it was done by humans. Father left in a hurry without saying anything, and I didn't go back to Asgard. Thor couldn't give any valuable information. Humans, haha. Loki laughed harshly. He laughed exaggeratedly and said, Do you believe that humans can do this? They can't even get out of their own planet. Thor didn't believe this rumor. The frost giants, who have been fighting against Asgard for nearly 1,000,000 years, may not be a respectable opponent, but they must be a powerful enemy. What about humans? Protected, believers, weak and backward humans. In the eyes of the Asgardians, humans were not a powerful race. Subconsciously, they looked down on these mortals. This was not only the psychological advantage of being revered as gods in history, but also the inherent contempt and neglect that the long-lived species had for the short-lived species. So Thor didn't refute anything. Instead, he emphasized, Father warned you not to touch Earth. It's very dangerous here. You can't afford to mess with it. After a moment of silence, he said in a somewhat depressed tone, My hammer was lost here. There is indeed something strange about this place. Loki, I will negotiate with the humans and bring you back as soon as possible. Loki replied with a scornful smile. After Thor left, Loki raised his head again, seemingly inadvertently glancing at the camera monitoring him. He was trapped in a high-strength transparent cage, surrounded by strict monitoring. Even if Asgard fought for it, he would have to hand over S.H.I.E.L.D's Tesseract to leave here. But Loki didn't seem to be worried about this. He found a more comfortable corner and slowly sat down against the wall. He opened his 5 fingers and slowly looked at his right hand. It could be seen that his right hand suddenly flashed strangely for a moment. It was as if the light and shadow had been distorted, becoming illusory and thin. Naturally, it couldn't be seen in the surveillance, but as long as one got closer, anyone could tell that it was an illusion. With the power of the mind gem, Loki even hid it from Thor. The real Loki stood at the top of the Stark building, and Dr. Eric was busy debugging the Tesseract's Tesseract. Hidden spatial fluctuations were constantly spreading into the universe, and in the eyes of those dangerous existences, the Earth was now as obvious as a lighthouse. Under the control of Dr. Eric, the powerful power of the Tesseract's Tesseract tore open the barrier of space and transmitted energy fluctuations in all directions. This kind of fluctuation that surpassed the speed of light, through the ubiquitous dimensional lines in the void, caused a mysterious response from the depths of the universe. On planet Ziritha, thousands of light-years away, the Ziritha people stood in front of the portal of light, and the invading troops were ready to pass through the portal in an orderly manner. But what Loki and the Ziritha people didn't expect was that this fluctuation was also transmitted to a mysterious dimension outside the universe. Chief, we received some strange signals. It seems to come from another world. In the Battle Police dimension, everyone in the Beijing base held their breath as they stared at the information from the other dimension on the light screen. The mysterious signal received by the anchoring device numbered SD-9527 by chance contained key information about the spatial coordinates of that world. Can we anchor that world? Someone asked excitedly and worriedly. Yes, this signal seems to be used to invite the establishment of a dimensional portal. The spatial coordinate information is very complete, and we are extracting other information. The other side is providing a lot of energy, and they are inviting us. Good. The comrades on the other side are so enthusiastic, we can't have stage fright. Order the troops to get ready." Everyone in the base breathed a sigh of relief. The previous few plane anchors of the Dimension Breakthrough Plan were either because the spatial coordinates were fuzzy or the dimensional distance was too far. Of course, the distance here was not the distance in space, but the difference in the laws of the world. The greater the difference, the more difficult it was to enter. At present, the best dimension could only be entered through mental projection. This time, the plane they contacted was very enthusiastic. Not only were the laws of the plane extremely compatible, they even sent the coordinates and provided the energy to establish the portal. It was a little too open. "We are getting closer and closer to the dimensional reduction critical point of the apocalypse. If we haven't found a new source of disturbance, we can only enter this world." The scientists and engineering teams of China and the Soviet Union cheered. Without delay, they immediately began to set up the three-phase portal according to the spatial coordinate. In the opposite world, Dr. Eric was already sweating profusely, but Loki still refused to let him go. He asked angrily, "Why did the progress suddenly slow down so much? The erection of the spatial portal is 9 hours later than the original plan. We don't have time. My doppelganger can't hide from SHIELD for long. But the energy load of the Tesseract cube is approaching its limit. I don't know what's wrong." Loki ignored Dr. Eric's explanation. He pointed his scepter at Dr. Eric's eyes and said coldly, "Give me all your power. I will give you 5 hours. Only success is allowed, no failure is allowed." The prism surface of the four-pillar spatial portal devours the energy of the Tesseract cube like a bottomless pit. This sudden change disrupted Loki's plan. Originally, it would only take an hour for the army of Zyardar to pour out of the spatial portal. The Avengers and SHIELD would be so busy that they would have no time to find trouble with him. But now, Loki has to find a way to fight for these 5 hours. Chapter 220. The intersection of endless spacetime was hidden in the depths of layers of void. Only existences at the level of the 5 great gods of the universe could peek at it, and even Thanatos was a bit lacking. This was the gate of the universe, one of the most important places in the entire world. The three-phase portal from the X-Men world passed through here, opening a gap in the space channel between Earth and planet Kiritha, opening this two-way channel in another direction, opening a portal to another dimension. Chen Eng's main consciousness was here. He was like an illusory shadow, hidden in the depths of endless spacetime, standing at the key point of the intersection of spacetime. A few exceedingly powerful consciousnesses that carried a shred of everlasting presence were firmly held in front of the dimensional intersection. Even if the rage of those beings had destroyed an area that was hundreds of thousands of light-years across and crushed nearby galaxies, the energies and information in that region were mixed into a blazing sea of chaos. It was impossible for Joshua to do anything about it. Lord of the Apocalypse, you opened the space-time gate again, violating the principles and laws of the Life Court, destroying the laws of the universe and the balance of reality, and will be judged by the Life Court. On behalf of this universe, we will destroy you completely. Chen Ong did not care about their anger, but just smiled and said, "Eternity, if you could destroy me, you would have done it as early as when the apocalypse first came. Star Eater, death, eternity, infinity, and annihilation, you represent the sum of matter, life, space, time, and non-existence of this universe, but as long as you have not surpassed this multi-body universe, you will always be restrained by the apocalypse. The apocalypse is waking up, and the 4 horsemen will follow him back to this world. It seems that it has been too long, so long that you have forgotten the fear of being dominated by them." A more obscure consciousness with an obscure aura that could wither the soul replied, "The Death Knight is mixed in my consciousness, and I can't use my power at all. Otherwise, it will cause a violent conflict of consciousness, and even obliterate my self-consciousness. The Death Knight is purer than my consciousness, closer to death. Star Eater, it's up to the four of you. Matter Skynet is also very troublesome. The consciousness replied slowly, I have not recovered from the damage caused by the last war. Annihilation's consciousness fluctuated slightly. From the previous battles, even if we could overwhelm the four horsemen, we would not be able to deal with the apocalypse. This time, the Tribunal of Life still has to guard against the Lord of Apocalypse, who created the apocalypse. On this world line, we have no chance of success at all. Not necessarily. Eternal, you have the deepest understanding of time among us. Do you have any ideas? Eternity was born in the instant of the Big Bang, and it was the materialization of the timeline. His consciousness was almost the future. As long as the 6 infinity gems are completed, the infinity gauntlet can be completed. Time will be out of my control. We might still have a chance. A collection of infinity gems, Nemesis, and the power of the Phoenix. Just as these consciousnesses were communicating, a vague shadow slowly appeared in the void. The moment he appeared, the 5 universe god consciousnesses avoided this existence, not daring to peek at the intersection of time and space. In the sky above the X-Men universe's Beijing base, an invisible plane was separated by a huge ring composed of more than 190 satellites. Spacecraft engraved with the Soviet flag slowly floated from the Vladivostok base, densely packed cannons like hedgehogs all over the body of the ship. The huge spacecraft battle group was like a mountain range in the sky, visible from Alaska to Lhasa. The Soviet comrades are too overbearing. This is the first contact with another dimensional civilization. How can they set the Star Destroyer cannon and vacuum shock bomb to active state? The chief of the base could not help but frown when he saw the cannons of the spacecraft. A city-level cosmic battleship has firepower at least 1,200 times more than normal. This definitely does not meet the standard of carrying people. The Soviets can't wait to dismantle the cabin and install energy weapons. The core furnace must be overloaded at least 3 times. Isn't this nonsense? The Soviet Union has a small population, and the newly reclaimed Central Asia only has a little more than 200 million people. They don't need so much transport capacity. It's understandable to increase firepower. Even so, they can't dismantle the phase shield. I think the Soviets want to carry out saturation and unlimited attacks first. Didn't the Cosmic Ethics and Sociology Research Center say, the principle of destruction first? I think the Soviets believe in this. The bureau chief shook his head and said, the first contact theory based on the 3 main inferences? When interstellar civilizations develop to the extent of mutual contact, their technology is bound to be diverse. Each civilization is definitely ahead of other civilizations in what they are best at. This conclusion is too absolute. There are no 2 identical leaves in the world. There are no 2 identical civilizations in the universe. The differences between interstellar civilizations will reach a level where they cannot understand each other. To other civilizations, the other party's technology and culture are like magic. They have the absolute priority in their field and the absolute lead. These are 2 characteristics. Therefore, every first contact civilization, they can destroy the other party first. With the advantage of information, they can destroy the first contact civilization at the lowest cost. Someone sighed and said, the Soviets really believe it. The base suddenly quietened down. Looking at the fleet in the sky, the staff in the base felt a chill down their spines. They seemed to have thought of something terrible at the same time, and their faces were filled with horror and fear. Someone couldn't help but scream, they can't do this. This is a crime. We don't even know what kind of existence the other civilization is and what their attitude is. To attack them with this theory of destruction first contact is simply anti-human. This kind of provocative and aggressive attitude will never achieve peace. The military representative hurriedly explained, "We are not Nazis. We are just being prepared, that's all." Someone replied with a sneer, "For the survival of mankind, this is the price we must pay. We don't have time. The apocalypse is pressing us. If we don't want to be slaves to the apocalypse, we must be determined. How much can we pay for this? I remember this is a topic that has been discussed. But that is a human sacrifice, not a massacre of innocents. That's even better. Are the lives of a few aliens more important than the lives of our people? If the three major powers on Earth, the United States, China, and the Soviet Union, don't know each other's information, then in such an information black screen, whoever has the information first will have the ability to destroy the other party. Even the most powerful United States will be destroyed by civilizations weaker than it under the information black screen. If there is no price to pay to destroy the other party, who can resist such a temptation? No one could answer. In the theory of first contact, the strange civilizations in the universe were like people with guns. The one who fired first would have an absolute advantage. The one who had the information advantage could easily destroy the civilization in front of him. Even if the two civilizations gave up on attacking each other in the first contact, the suspicion brought about by the advantage of mutual destruction still put peace in jeopardy. This chain of suspicion in the prisoner's dilemma still put peace in jeopardy. Just as the atmosphere between the two opposing factions became tense, a loud shout calmed both sides down at the same time. "Stop arguing!" The person in charge of the Beijing base stood up and looked around the hall. He saw many complicated and indescribable gazes, as well as some emotions that even they themselves could not understand. Everyone here was confused about the future. No one knew what they would encounter on the other side. Was it survival and development? Or war and destruction? The bureau chief slowly said, "The situation on the other side has been projected by the dimension detector. Everyone can take a look." A video started playing on the big screen. A densely packed army neatly lined up behind the teleportation portal. The ferocious Chitauris held their ray guns with bloodthirst and fanaticism in their eyes. The snake-shaped spaceships and various war machines were aimed at the exit of the teleportation portal. There were traces of war everywhere. Everything showed that peace was no more. There was only war in the future, and it had to be war. Everyone present fell into silence. All arguments had dissipated. Humans did not need to make difficult choices. But even the staunchest humanist faction could not feel happy. This meant that the future was full of blood and fire. Chapter 221. On planet Chitauri, thousands of light years away from Earth, a teleportation gate made up of 6 metal rings stood on the plains. The rings were nested layer by layer. Just the diameter alone was a few thousand meters high. Hiss, hiss, hiss. Outside the huge teleportation gate, the Chitauri army was like a giant beast sitting on the plains. Tens of thousands of steel snake-shaped spaceships were floating in the air. Even though there were millions of soldiers, they could still hear the whistling sound of the wind passing through the steel rings. The Chitauri were considered a powerful, brutal, and arrogant race in the wider universe. "There's something wrong with the spacetime gate. That useless Loki." A Chitauri with half of his face covered in a cloak sneered. He had the usual fierce aura of their race. The wind that was brought up by his walk had a bloody smell. On the light screen in front of the Chitauri researchers, the value that represented the stability parameters of the teleportation gate soared. They were so anxious that they were sweating profusely. A researcher who seemed to have some status looked at the curve on the light screen that was out of control and said anxiously, "The other side seems to be opening a second teleportation gate. We've contacted Loki. It's not him. It might be the work of humans." "The other side? Isn't that Earth?" the cloaked man said in surprise. But he quickly came back to his senses. He looked at the teleportation gate that was releasing energy and laughed. "The Earthlings are actually trying to open the teleportation gate to the Chitauri. They're courting death." I've never seen a race that greedy to this extent. They're as weak as insects, and they're actually trying to invade our planet. Ah! The surrounding cheetahs all burst into laughter. Hiss, 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 weak and stupid races don't have the right to live in this world, the cloaked man said loudly. He took out the saber in his hand and pointed it at the teleportation gate and roared, "Soldiers, follow me and crush those insects." The Chitauri soldiers roared, "Crush them!" All the Chitauri soldiers had ferocious and excited expressions on their faces. They grinned and wiped the ray guns in their hands. They were thinking about how to conquer that weak planet and start a massacre on it. There were also a few slave merchants in the universe who were bowing at the side. They were smiling and discussing the sale of Earth's slaves with the Chitauri officers. The Zetaris are a military race, technological and cultural. Their economy was based on their powerful military strength. In other words, they were not a race at all, but a professional army of the Thanos. They relied on plundering, conquering other planets and civilizations to plunder their wealth. Selling the natives of the conquered planets to this slave trader was an important source of income for them. Something's wrong, Led. The scholar was a bit uneasy. The other side is trying to seize control of the portal. They're trying to control the portal on our side. What does that mean? The cloaked man didn't care. That means their spatial technology is better than ours. The scholar Walker pointed at the curved line on the screen. The two portals have achieved energy flow, even if we cut off the power supply. The Tesseract could also maintain the portal. The spatial warping data is out of our control. Get to the point. The cloaked man's voice made the scholar tremble. The cloaked man seemed to realize that he had frightened the scholar, so he relaxed a little and said, "How will these things affect us?" The scholar skipped most of the content and said simply, "We won't be able to close the portal." "So what?" The cloaked man opened his arms and gestured with his back facing the Chitauri army. "Do you think humans can pose any threat to us? We have conquered countless planets and destroyed countless civilizations. Earth is just an insignificant bug in front of them. Destroying them is as easy as flipping a hand." The value representing the spatial warping data on the screen suddenly broke through the red line. A dazzling beam of light rushed out of the portal and rushed into the sky, causing a tremor that overturned a group of people nearby. Dozens of Chitauri warriors were swallowed by the blazing energy beam, clearing an empty space in front of the portal. But this was just a flash of one-way teleportation. It was not a stable portal. After the energy beam dissipated, only an iron-gray metal ball was left there. It was about 1.5 meters in diameter, suspended high above the atmosphere of planet Chitauri. On the outer shell of the metal ball, the light blue traces of the energy beam were very obvious. The red light that represented a warning was constantly flashing, giving off a beep warning sound. The beep became more and more urgent and louder, and soon there was only a continuous beep. "What is this thing?" the cloaked man wondered. But soon he knew. After the red light of the metal ball stopped flashing, it suddenly shrank into a dot and was swallowed by the void. Then, it was swallowed up by the void. With the metal ball as the center, an extremely distorted force field suddenly spread out and swept across the entire atmosphere in the shortest time. Wherever it passed, the void shook. Gravity was chaotic, light was distorted, and any object that came into contact with this transparent force field wave was instantly broken into irregular fragments and shot out in all directions. The snake-shaped spaceship suspended outside the atmosphere was swept by this wave. The huge metal hull suddenly twisted into a fried dough twist. The flesh and blood of the soldiers inside were like crushed oranges spraying out. The blood and meat sauce were evenly sprinkled in the surrounding space. The surrounding space was like a piece of white paper that was crumpled into a ball. The things drawn on it were messed up, broken apart, crushed, and mixed together evenly. Although it did not lose its shape, it crossed the inherent structure of three-dimensional space and was rearranged in a chaotic high-dimensional way. However, in the eyes of others, it looked like it was squeezed into a ball. From the location of the metal ball to the portal in the atmosphere, there was a spherical space with a diameter of 300,000 meters, including most of the area where the Chitauri army was located. It even included a small half of the huge range of the planet. The inherent structure of all matter was completely disrupted. The steel spaceships and small aircraft were twisted into strange shapes and compressed into solid metal balls one after another. The Chitauri soldiers seemed to have been squeezed by a huge gravity, then flattened, rolled up, and squeezed again. It was repeated dozens of times. Their heads and feet were on the same level, and their brains and buttocks occupied a different space. Relatively intact corpses could only be seen a little further away from this area. Due to the gravitational disorder caused by the space shock, some organs were torn apart. All of this happened incredibly fast. 1 second ago, it was the Chitauri army, and the next second there were corpses everywhere. On the other side of the portal, in the control center of the three-phase portal of the Beijing base, the AI stated in a calm and stiff voice, "The space shock bomb has been successfully released. The portal will be stable again in 3 minutes. Preparing the thermonuclear bomb. Preparing the vacuum implosion bomb. Preparing the gravitational deformity generator. Final debugging of the artificial intelligence. Next wave of bombardment troops. The space cruise missiles of the 2nd Artillery Unit are in place, beginning the deep space dark matter invisibility. According to the spatial structure information, readjusting the antimatter chain reaction. The humans' contact and precise strikes had achieved effective results for the Drow. What the Chitauri army never expected was that they had been attacked so ferociously before they had even set out. The humans had not sent a single soldier, but they had first launched a wave of close-range strikes according to their own rhythm of war. Derived from the war experience of the Earth era, the humans had dropped saturated firepower at the enemy's assembly point. Chapter 222. The war in the universe was different from any war that humans had ever experienced. In this regard, humans were still students. It took place in the endless universe, with light years as the unit, stars as the battlefield, stars, gravitational fields, planetary belts, and orbits. Hundreds of millions of battleships and automatic weapons fell like dumplings in outer space like scrap iron. The insignificance of the individual and the vastness of the universe were the extreme contrast. Humans had never had such an experience and had never felt the grandeur and cruelty of an interstellar war at such a close distance. The Chitauri had built at least 30 low-Earth orbit bases on their home planet, and the defense system on the planet was even more rigorous and precise. It could be said that the entire planet was a huge war machine. If it weren't for the Chitauri arrogantly opening a portal within the defense system, humans wouldn't have been able to touch their vital points. After the three-phase portal stabilized, the first to be stationed in was the Republic's engineering team and guards. They were responsible for expanding the portal and building a transit fortress. Then came the 3rd Artillery Unit, who were responsible for hitting the shells into the territory controlled by the Chitauri. Although they were not artillery troops, nor did they use missiles. Everyone felt that the correct name for them should be the Hyperdimensional Expansion Strike Force. Using the spatial technology learned from Apocalypse, they were able to project troops and cannons from the Superdimensional Expansion Strike Force. Their weapons were dimensional transmission devices, which had nothing to do with those ancient weapons called cannons. Through the three-phase portal that was urgently set up at the original site of the Chitauri's portal as a transit point, the Communist League in outer space directed 1,089 space energy detection and attack satellites in Beijing, Tianjin, Zhengzhou, Tangshan, and other large space transmission bases. They extended dimensional control to the Republic's observation range, to achieve the expansion and strike of the hyperdimension. Like the first space shock bomb, the Republic released 80,000 of them in the first round. It was almost half a year's output of the entire Soviet Union. The Chitauri could never imagine how a race could invest so much enthusiasm in developing weapons to kill themselves. Space shock bomb, gravity generator bomb, energy disruption bomb, ultra-high-frequency energy wave, light particle carrier virus, gamma radiation storm. Humanity's endless creativity and imagination in terms of destruction and slaughter was enough to make Chen Ong gasp in admiration. For the sake of self-destruction, humans have really devoted all of their willpower to create endless brilliance, creating the ultimate brilliance. The harsher the conditions for the existence of life were, the more exciting the methods humans used to destroy and kill life were. Extremely high temperature, super low temperature, supergravity, high radiation, shock waves, dynamic potential energy, especially after the Republic took the risk of sending an European community team to a near-stellar orbit. The in-depth cooperation of the two allies completed an unprecedented weapon attack that almost destroyed all of the Zeridians. It was a unique energy biochemical weapon, the light particle energy virus, developed by the European Community Research Institute to target the special life form of the plague messenger's light quantum entanglement life form, Sephiroth. It used light particles as a carrier. It was a destructive energy construct that could self-replicate using light as a medium and spread in the form of light radiation. It could be said to be unbelievably great. It was an extremely crazy weapon. If it wasn't for the fact that the energy structure was extremely unstable and the virus reproduction period was only 3 minutes, this virus could turn the entire universe's light into a plague that was extremely dangerous to life. Starting from the infection of a star, the light plague would spread at the speed of light. As long as there was a beam of light particles that were invisible to human eyes, the light plague would spread at the speed of light. As long as its mimetic information flow was complete, it could turn a star into a source of infection. Using the coordinates provided by the team as a reference, the European community scientists projected the light particle virus meme onto the star of the Zeridians. It zombified the entire star. The attack lasted for 13 minutes, and the star that the Zeridians were familiar with became the source of the light plague, spreading to the entire star in just 17 seconds. Then it spread to the entire galaxy along with the light radiation. Any Zeridians exposed to the light source began to feel itchy. In a short period of time, this itch turned into pain, and their skin began to fester. The originally harmless sunlight became highly toxic radiation, 173 times more toxic than nuclear radiation. It was composed of the 3 common types of radiation, alpha, beta, and gamma, and the most dangerous type of radiation, omega rays. This compound radiation is highly toxic and has excellent penetration. It can pass through a lead plate 13 mm thick and still achieve the effect of a tiny dose of death. It is one of the superviruses developed by the European Union specifically for the apocalypse and Sephiroth. The commander of the Republic of Korea listened to the nuclear radiation expert at the Beijing base. Can you provide specific data on its lethal dose? The expert retrieved the data from the quantum light computer and explained, take the planet codenamed Zerida as an example. Its radiation at night is 150 million times the lethal dose. Even in a completely sealed underground 200 meters deep, it can kill the Zeridians in 3 seconds. Even if it is a lead plate, it still does not reach a safe radiation range when it is less than 2 meters thick on the surface. Have our soldiers been protected? The commander was concerned about this point. Most of them have withdrawn here, and a small number of soldiers who stayed on the other side have also activated a small space barrier. They will be safe after the radiation danger period is over. The military expert said with slight regret, it's just that the soldiers of the European community have no chance of survival after being exposed to the star's radiation source at such a close distance. They are martyrs. They are the soldiers who have made great sacrifices for the liberation and survival of mankind. The commander sighed, please express my highest respect to the comrades of the European community for me. take precautions. As long as the light particle virus infects the light source, it can create a stubborn infection source. Be careful of equipment that can emit light. When you reopen the three-phase portal, you can use the dimension to reset and reorganize the matter on the other side. The space technology of the Republic is enough to prevent the spread of the light plague. The European community also discovered later that the light virus does not work on space barrier technology. For quantum entangled life, the radiation virus also cannot exert the terrible lethality against carbon-based life. What the European community has developed is a weapon to destroy mankind. The commander nodded and said, "The psychological pressure brought to the comrades of the European community and the Soviet Union by the apocalypse is too great. Our research, some time ago, can already be called crazy. I did not expect that the comrades of the Soviet Union are even more hysterical than we are, and the comrades of the European community are close to losing their minds." The future observation technology of the superluminal non-interference observation device is the last line of defense of the Republic. During this period of time, mankind has researched countless dangerous technologies, each of which has the possibility of destroying civilization. The observation and grasp of the future is to ensure the continuation of the civilization of the Republic and the survival of the human race. The Prophet and the superluminal observation device show normal. The comrades of the Soviet Union request to enter the Zirida system in an hour and launch a general attack. There are no longer any Zirida troops on the other side of the portal that can pose a threat to them. The performance of the Zirida people is too weak. Let the comrades of the Soviet Union take the lead.